The Dragon's Ascent, Book 3 of the Unborn Odyssey series, Vajragoni, Foreword to The Dragon's Ascent. The Dragon's Ascent unfurls as a magnificent tapestry, a vibrant climax that stands alone as a noble enterprise, a tale of ascent through shadowed trials to the radiant peak of the unborn mind's light. Here, in the Wasteland's desolate embrace, beneath the temple's obsidian spires, a symphony of heroism and sacrifice resounds. Its threads, Evan's black dragon resolve, Pamela's Bodhichild's full awakening, Agnes's unknowing bridge, woven with a passion that pulses through every page. This is no mere continuation, but a summit of spirit, a journey that begins where the road ends, where the unborn whispers its call, and three souls rise to meet it with a courage as timeless as the stars, as intimate as a heartbeat. As you, dear reader, stand poised to step into this final odyssey, let anticipation stir your soul, for The Dragon's Ascent is a vibrant crescendo, a tale that promises to sweep you into the noble enterprise of the unborn with a majesty that will linger long after the final word fades. Evan strides forth as the black dragon's beating heart, a warrior whose ascent threads the dragon's ascent with a resolve as fierce as it is radiant, a figure whose footsteps echo through the wasteland's ash like a drumbeat of destiny. From the moment he leaves the temple's archway, his robes shimmering with galactic patterns, his furba, etched with Naga sigils, gleams with a purpose born of stillness. The fourth dhyana, his meditative blade, steadies his hand against trials yet unseen, a clarity that promises to pierce the shadows with a vibrancy that stirs the soul. His journey is no mere march, but a soaring flight, a black dragon's ascent to a peak of noble wisdom, his every step a note in the symphony's rising swell, a heroism that beckons you to feel the wind of the wasteland, to sense the weight of his blade, to rise with him into the unknown. Pamela emerges as the Bodhisattva's radiant breath, her presence a thread of light that weaves through the dragon's ascent, with a grace as profound as it is powerful, a woman whose road ignites the tapestry's climax with a warmth that pierces the wasteland's chill. Clad in white robes, her furba, a gift from distant days, sings with a chant, Om Behazar Kile, Kilea Sarver Bing Ne Bam Hum Fet, a melody of resolve that echoes through the shadows, its rhythm a heartbeat of anticipation. The medallion of the great other tree, pressed into her hands by a bond forged in fire, pulses at her chest, its branches a testament to a legacy she carries forward. Her Bodhichild stirring within, as a light yet to bloom. Her path is a crescendo of awakening, a bodhisattva's vow to bear the unborn's radiance, a thread that promises to lift your heart with its vibrant glow, as timeless as a lotus in bloom, as near as a whispered prayer. Agnes, the sage of Unknowing, weaves the tapestry's bridge a thread of quiet sacrifice that binds Evan and Pamela into a trinity of light, her presence a haunting note in the Dragon's Ascent symphony. From her hermitage's wisdom in days past, she steps into the wasteland's crucible, her medallion a beacon of sprouting branches, her unknowing a stillness that threads through the chaos with a serenity as deep as the void. Her light flares in moments yet to unfold, a sage's resolve that steadies the black dragon and bodhisattva against shadows unseen, her sacrifice a bridge to the unborn's heart. Agnes's thread is a vibrant hum, a melody of surrender that promises to resonate in your soul, a call to find strength in stillness, as eternal as the kalpas she spans, as intimate as the silence you carry. This trinity, Evan's black dragon, Pamela's Bodhichild, Agnes's unknowing, threads the dragon's ascent into a tapestry of such vibrant splendor that it stands as a climax alive with anticipation, a symphony that swells with the unborn mind's light against the wasteland's shadowed veil. The wasteland itself, a desolate expanse of ash and trial, unfurls as a crucible where courage meets mystery, its winds whispering secrets of a challenge yet to rise. Its terrain, a forge for the Trinity's ascent. The Temple of the Black Dragons looms as a sentinel, its obsidian spires a promise of revelation, its sanctum a stage for a crescendo waiting to sound. Every page pulses with this vibrant promise, a journey that invites you to walk beside Evan, Pamela, and Agnes, to feel the fourth dhyana's stillness, the Bodhichild's awakening, the Unknowing's bridge, a tapestry that sings of a noble enterprise as vast as the cosmos, as near as your own breath. As you turn these pages, dear reader, feel the wasteland's call, the temple's pulse, the Trinity's light a journey awaits, as majestic as a dragon's flight, as radiant as a lotus bloom, as eternal as the silence that sings. Step forth into this ascent the unborn beckons, and its legacy is yours to embrace. Prologue to the Dragon's Ascent. The end of Book 2, Pamela and Agnes's Triumph. In the waning days of their odyssey chronicled in Meet the Buddhas, Pamela and Agnes stood atop a windswept plateau, the air thick with the acrid stench of Mara's malice. The Demon King, his form a grotesque tapestry of shadow and flame, had unleashed his minions' twisted apparitions of desire and delusion to ensnare them in the coils of the mirror of samsara. The sky churned with storm clouds, each thunderclap a taunt from Mara's legion, daring the two women to falter. Yet they were not alone. The 5 Dhyani Buddhas had descended in radiant splendor, summoned by Pamela's unwavering faith in her Bodhicild and Agnes's mystic resonance with the Unknowing. Vairocana blazed at the center, his white light dissolving ignorance, while Aksovia's blue calm shattered Mara's rage. Ratnasambhava's golden generosity countered greed, Amitabha's red compassion burned through attachment, and Amoghasiddhi's green fearlessness banished doubt. Their mandala pulsed with the rhythm of the unborn, a celestial symphony that drowned Mara's cacophony. Pamela, her hands rolling the Furba Evan had gifted her, chanted its sacred mantra, Om Bahasar Kili, Kilea Sarvarbing, Nebam Hum Fet, each syllable a lance of light, piercing the minions' forms. Her Bodhicild, now a radiant ember within her Dharma womb, flared with each breath, its glow a beacon that guided the Buddha's power. Beside her, Agnes stood serene, her silver medallion of the great other tree gleaming against her chest. She spoke no words, only a silent prayer drawn from the depths of the cloud of unknowing, her unknowing aura unraveling the illusions Mara wove. Together, they formed an unshakable axis, the Buddha's energies flowing through them like rivers into the sea. The battle raged for hours, the plateau scarred by the clash of light and shadow. Mara's minions fell one by one, dissolving into ash as Vairocana's wisdom stripped their essence, or fleeing as Amoghasiddhi's wrathful double Vajra struck true. At last Mara himself roared, his form swelling to eclipse the sky, but Pamela and Agnes held firm. With a final surge, Pamela thrust her Furba skyward, its tip igniting with the Bodhicild's fire, while Agnes lifted her medallion, its branches shimmering as if alive. The 5 Dhyani Buddhas converged, their light coalescing into a single blinding ray that pierced Mara's heart. He howled, his form fracturing into 1,000 shards of darkness, then vanished, leaving only silence. As the storm cleared, Pamela and Agnes stood amidst the plateau's ruin, breathless but unbroken. The Buddhas faded, their parting gift a whisper of assurance. The path to the unborn lay open. Pamela clutched her Furba, its warmth a reminder of Evan, while Agnes traced the medallion's branches, sensing a new growth stirring within it, a promise of trials yet to come. They turned from the battlefield, their bond forged anew, ready to carry the light of their victory into an uncertain future. Book 3 opens, Evan in the Temple of the Black Dragons. Years had passed since Evan crossed the celestial archway into the Temple of the Black Dragons, his initiation, a distant memory now etched into the marrow of his being. The uncertain seeker of the Unborn Odyssey was no more. In his place stood a disciple tempered by time, his spirit honed by the rigorous discipline and mystical practices of the Order. The temple had become his crucible, its enigmatic interior a world unto itself, a labyrinth of sacred halls, glowing crystals, and meditative chambers that thrummed with the eternal chants of the Black Dragons. The temple sprawled beneath a canopy of starless void, its architecture defying mortal logic. Walls of polished obsidian stretched into impossible heights, their surfaces veined with luminescent threads that pulsed like living arteries. Sacred halls wound through the structure, each a gallery of ancient relics. Jeweled lotus thrones, Furbas forged from fallen stars, and tapestries depicting the Buddha's triumphs across countless kalpas. The air shimmered with a faint haze, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and the resonance of deep guttural chants intonations of the unborn mind that reverberated through the stone, setting Evan's bones humming. At the temple's heart lay the crystal sanctum, a vast chamber where jagged spires of quartz rose from the floor, their facets ablaze with captured light. These glowing crystals refracted the chants into prismatic echoes, bathing the space in a kaleidoscope of hues: crimson, indigo, gold that danced across Evan's black robes. Here, he spent hours in meditation, his furba resting across his knees, its meteoric iron cool against his palms. The sanctum was a mirror to the unborn, its stillness amplifying his perception until the boundaries of self dissolved, leaving only the radiant void within. Beyond the sanctum, meditative chambers lined the labyrinth, each a hollowed sphere of basalt carved with mandalas older than time. Within these confines, Evan practiced the fourth dhyana, his breath syncing with the temple's pulse, his mind plunging into the dark principle of the unborn. The black dragon's chants, low, resonant, and unending, wove a tapestry of sound that guided him deeper, their voices a chorus of light-bringers who had transcended form. Evan was no longer the novice who stumbled through visions of towers and abysses. He was an adept, his discipline unyielding, his will a blade tempered by years of surrender. Yet, even as he adapted to the Order's mysteries, the temple's depths remained an enigma. Hidden passages spiraled into shadow, their destinations known only to the Grand Black Dragon Supreme. Whispers of the Mani Pearl, the sacred relic he now guarded, spoke of its power to unveil the Dharmakaya itself, a promise Evan felt in every fiber of his being. Clad in the majestic robes of the Black Dragons, their intricate patterns swirling like galaxies, he stood as a sentinel of the unborn, his past with Pamela and Agnes a faint echo, his present a ceaseless exploration of the infinite. On this fateful day, as the crystals flared with an unusual intensity, Evan knelt before the Mani Pearl's pedestal, its light a silent hymn in his grasp. The temple's chants swelled, a tide of sound that carried him toward the edge of revelation until the shadows tore through, and the pearl was lost. Chapter 1. The Light Torn Asunder. Evan knelt in the crystal sanctum, the heart of the Temple of the Black Dragons, where the air thrummed with a resonance older than the stars. The chamber sprawled around him, a cathedral of shadow and light carved from the bones of some primordial void. Jagged spires of quartz thrust upward from the basalt floor, their facets aglow with captured radiance: crimson, indigo, and gold swirling in a silent dance. The walls, polished obsidian veined with luminescent threads, stretched into an unseen zenith, their surfaces reflecting the sanctum's pulse like a living mirror. Above, no ceiling reigned, only an expanse of starless darkness loomed, as if the temple itself breathed within the unborn's embrace. Before him rested the Mani Pearl, cradled on a pedestal of twisted iron and jade. It was no mere ornament, but a relic of incomprehensible power, a crystalline orb no larger than a clenched fist, its surface alive with an inner fire that pulsed in time with Evan's breath. Its light was not of this world. It shimmered with the hues of countless Buddhas, a hymn of the unborn mind made manifest. Each flicker seemed to whisper truths beyond language, dissolving the skandhas of form and thought, drawing Evan ever deeper into the radiant void within. He had guarded it for years now, his days and nights woven into its rhythm, his spirit tempered by its presence. Clad in the majestic robes of the Black Dragons, their intricate patterns swirling like galaxies across the black fabric, Evan sat cross-legged, his meteoric furba resting across his knees. The dagger's iron, forged from a fallen star, gleamed faintly in the pearl's glow, its triangular blade etched with the coiled form of a naga tails descending to a razor point. His hands, calloused from years of rolling the furba in sacred chants, lay still, palms upward in a gesture of surrender. His breath flowed in the cadence of spirit breathing, a practice honed over countless hours in the temple's meditative chambers. Inhale qi rising from the dantian below his navel. Exhale the subtle energies of the unborn circulating through his being. The pearl's light synced with this rhythm, a silent duet that anchored him to the gateless gate of the fourth dhyana. The sanctum was alive with sound. a low, resonant chant that rolled from the throats of unseen black dragons hidden within the temple's labyrinth. Their voices wove a tapestry of the unborn guttural, eternal, a tide that carried Evan beyond the confines of self. Om, hum, fet. The syllables reverberated through the quartz spires, fracturing into prismatic echoes that bathed the chamber in a kaleidoscope of sound and light. Evan's mind plunged into the dark principle, where no form held sway, where the tower within him, the Dharmakaya itself, loomed as a shadow of infinite possibility. He was no longer the uncertain seeker who had stumbled through visions of ruined churches and abysses in years past. He was a disciple, his will a blade forged in the crucible of the temple's discipline. Yet, even in this stillness, a faint tremor stirred at the edge of his awareness, a ripple in the pearl's light, a discord in the chant's harmony. Evan's eyes, half closed beneath the weight of meditation, flickered open, their deep brown catching the sanctum's glow. The air thickened, a sudden heaviness pressing against his chest, as if the void above had exhaled a breath of malice. The pearl's pulse quickened, its rhythm faltering, and Evan's breath caught in his throat. Something was wrong. Before he could rise, the sanctum shuddered. A rift tore through the air, a jagged wound of shadow and silence that split the chamber's radiance like a blade through flesh. The chants faltered, their echoes swallowed by an unnatural stillness, and the quartz spires dimmed as if recoiling. From the rift emerged a presence, a shadowy, multi-eyed entity, its form a writhing mass of darkness that defied comprehension. Countless eyes gleamed within its bulk, each a pinprick of malevolent light, some crimson, some sickly yellow, all shifting and blinking in a chaos of awareness. Tendrils of shadow unfurled from its core, coiling like smoke yet solid as iron, their tips glistening with a sheen that suggested both liquid and void. It moved with a grace that belied its horror, a predator born of nightmare, its presence a stain against the sanctum's purity. Evan's hand tightened on the furba, instinct surging through years of training. He lunged to his feet, the robes swirling about him, and raised the dagger in a defensive arc. Om Bahasa Kili, he began, the mantra a reflex to banish such defilement, but the entity was faster. A tendril lashed out, swift as a serpent strike, and coiled around the Mani Pearl. The relic's light flared in protest, a burst of brilliance that seared Evan's vision, but the shadow held firm. With a soundless wrench, the tendril tore the pearl from its pedestal, the iron and jade cracking like brittle bone. The entity's eyes pulsed in unison, a mockery of triumph, and then it retreated its form, collapsing back into the rift, the pearl vanishing with it into the void. The rift snapped shut, a thunderclap of silence that left the sanctum reeling. The quartz spires flickered, their glow muted, and the chants resumed hesitantly, a thread of sound struggling to mend the breach. Evan stood frozen, the furba still raised, its tip trembling in the air. The pedestal gaped empty before him, a wound in the temple's heart, and the absence of the pearl's light struck him like a physical blow. His perception of the unborn, so clear moments ago, dulled a veil of fog settling over his mind, the radiant void receding beyond his grasp. His breath rasped, shallow and uneven, as the weight of failure crashed upon him. He had been its guardian, years of discipline, of surrender to the Black Dragon's ways, and he had faltered at the moment of truth. The sanctum's stillness mocked him, its shadows lengthening as if to swallow his shame. He lowered the furba, its weight a rebuke in his hands, and sank to his knees before the broken pedestal. The chant swelled, a tide of reproach, and Evan's mind churned with questions he could not voice. What was that thing? How had it breached the temple's defenses wards forged by the Grand Black Dragon Supreme himself? And the pearl its loss was no mere theft. It was a desecration, a threat to the very Dharma he had sworn to protect. Footsteps echoed through the sanctum, deliberate and resonant, cutting through the haze of Evan's guilt. He raised his head, the robes rustling as he turned, and saw the Grand Black Dragon Supreme emerge from the labyrinth's depths. The Elder towered above him, a figure of awe clad in robes that shimmered with the void's own darkness, their patterns a constellation of unseen stars. His face was a mask of weathered nobility eyes like polished onyx, a beard flowing white as snow, and a presence that bent the air with its weight. In his right hand, he held a staff of gnarled wood topped with a crystal orb, its light a faint echo of the lost pearl. The chants hushed as he approached, the sanctum holding its breath. "Rise, Evan," the Supreme intoned, his voice a deep rumble that stirred the court spires to life. Evan obeyed, though his legs felt leaden, and met the elder's gaze. There was no anger there, only a grave intensity that pierced Evan's soul. "The light of the Unborn has been torn from us," the Supreme continued, his staff tapping the floor with a sound like distant thunder. "That which stole it is no mere shadow, but a force of corruption, a blight that seeks to unravel reality itself." Evan's throat tightened. "I failed you," he said, the words raw and unbidden. "I was its guardian, and I let it slip through my hands." The Supreme's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something pity, perhaps crossing his features. "Guilt is a chain, Evan. Break it, or it will bind you when you must move swiftest." He stepped closer, the staff's orb casting a faint glow across Evan's face. "The relic's power is vast. It amplifies the Unborn, yes, but in the wrong hands, it can twist the Alaya Vijnana into a mire of illusion. If it is not reclaimed, the long night of the carnal mind will descend, and the Dharma's light will gutter out." Evan's chest ached, the Supreme's words a hammer against his resolve. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice steadying despite the turmoil within. "You are a black dragon," the Supreme replied, his tone a command. "You have walked the path of the fourth Dhyana, borne the weight of our order's discipline. Now, you must hunt this thief beyond the temple's walls. Track the pearl's resonance. Its light cannot be wholly silenced, even in shadow. Recover it, Evan, and restore what has been lost." Evan nodded, the Furba's heft grounding him as he gripped it anew. The Supreme stepped back, his staff striking the floor once more, and the chants surged a chorus of resolve that filled the sanctum with purpose. "Go with the Unborn's grace," the Elder said, his voice fading into the sound, "and beware the shadow that took it knows your light." As the Supreme retreated into the labyrinth, Evan turned to the empty pedestal, his guilt a smoldering ember beneath a rising tide of determination. The pearl's absence dulled his perception, but years of training held firm spirit breathing, the Furba's mantra, the dark principle of the Unborn. He would find it. He had to. With a final glance at the sanctum's flickering crystals, he strode toward the temple's outer gates, the weight of his robes a mantle of duty, the theft a wound he would mend or die trying. Chapter 2. Into the Wasteland. Evan stepped beyond the temple's outer gates, the threshold of the Black Dragon's sanctum giving way to a world unmoored from time. The air beyond was brittle, sharp with the tang of ash and ozone, as if the earth itself had exhaled a dying breath. Before him stretched a liminal wasteland, a boundless expanse of cracked stone and twisted scrub, its horizon swallowed by a haze that shimmered with faint, unnatural hues. No sun hung overhead, only a diffuse glow that seeped from the sky's edges, casting long, jagged shadows that writhed like living things. The temple loomed at his back, its obsidian spires piercing the void, a beacon of order against the chaos he now faced. But its chants faded with each step, their resonance swallowed by the silence of this forsaken realm. He adjusted the weight of his robes, the black fabric swirling with galactic patterns that seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. The meteoric Furba hung at his side, secured by a leather thong, its naga-etched blade a cold comfort against his hip. In his hands, he carried a small satchel provisions sparse enough to honor the ascetic rigor of his order, a vial of consecrated water, a palm-sized disc of pressed rice, and a fragment of quartz from the sanctum, its glow a dim echo of the lost Mani Pearl. He had no map, no compass. Only the pearl's resonance guided him, a faint, thrumming pulse that tugged at the edges of his awareness, a thread of light woven into the fabric of his spirit breathing. Evan closed his eyes, centering himself as he had done countless times within the temple's meditative chambers. Inhale, the ki rose from his dantian, a warm tide beneath his navel. Exhale, the energies circulated, seeking the pearl's echo. There, a flicker, distant and fragile, like a star glimpsed through storm clouds. It pulled him northward, toward the wasteland's heart, where the haze thickened into a veil of shadow. He opened his eyes, the brown depths hardened with resolve, and began to walk, his boots crunching against the brittle stone. The Grand Black Dragon Supreme's words echoed in his mind. Track the pearl's resonance, its light cannot be wholly silenced, even in shadow. Failure was not an option. The temple's honor, the Dharma's light, rested on his shoulders. The wasteland unfolded around him, a landscape of desolation that seemed to shift with each step. Craggy outcrops jutted from the ground, their surfaces etched with spiraling runes that pulsed faintly, as if alive with some forgotten intent. Skeletal trees clawed at the sky, their branches twisted into knots that resembled screaming faces, frozen in silent agony. The air grew heavier, laden with a hum that vibrated through Evan's bones, a sound not of life, but of something older, something that fed on absence. He tightened his grip on the Foreward, its heft a reminder of his training, and pressed onward, the pearl's pulse, his only anchor. Hours bled into one another, the wasteland's timelessness eroding his sense of progress. The glow from the sky never shifted, offering no marker of day or night, and the silence pressed against his ears like a physical weight. Yet Evan's discipline held firm. He moved with the measured grace of a black dragon, each step a meditation, each breath a reaffirmation of the unborn. The pearl's resonance grew stronger, a beacon in the fog of his dulled perception, and with it came a whisper of hope, a flicker of the radiant void he had known in the sanctum. He clung to it, a lifeline against the wasteland's despair. But the wasteland was not content to let him pass untested. As he crested a low rise, the air warped, a ripple of distortion that bent the light into jagged shards. Before him, the ground shuddered, and a vision rose, a mirage born of shadow and memory. The ruined church from his past, the one he had beheld in the Unborn Odyssey, materialized in stark relief. Marble slabs cracked and moss-eaten, columns toppled like felled giants, and a spectral spire gleaming in the wasteland's false light. Evan's breath caught, the Foreward trembling in his hand. It was no mere memory. It pulsed with intent, a trap woven from his own mind. From the church's shadowed maw emerged figures, echoes of his former self, cloaked in the tattered robes of a seeker, their faces blurred yet achingly familiar. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their voices a chorus of doubt. "You failed," they hissed, the words slithering through the air. "The pearl is lost because of you. What guardian lets his charge slip away?" Evan's chest tightened, guilt surging like a tide, but he recognized the illusion's game. These were not his past. They were shadows, conjured to bind him. He planted his feet, the Foreward raised before him, and entered the fourth dhyana. His breath steadied, the chi flowing in a silent rhythm, and his mind plunged into the dark principle. The church wavered, its edges fraying, but the figures pressed closer, their accusations sharpening. "You abandoned Pamela! You left Agnes! You are no black dragon, only a fool in robes!" Evan's jaw clenched, the barbs striking deep. But he recalled the primordial's teaching from years ago. There is naught to be seized. This was not failure to reclaim. It was a test to release. Om Biaser, Kili Kalea Sarver, Bing Nabam Hum Fet, he intoned, rolling the Foreward between his palms. The mantra's syllables cut through the silence, a blade of sound that echoed across the wasteland. The figures recoiled, their forms unraveling like smoke, and the church dissolved, its stones crumbling into dust that scattered on the wind. Evan exhaled, the illusion shattered, and the pearl's pulse flared brighter, a reward for his clarity. He lowered the Foreward, sweat beading on his brow, and felt a flicker of triumph, yet the wasteland's hum deepened, a warning that more trials loomed. As he descended the rise, the terrain shifted again. The cracked stone gave way to a field of ash, its surface rippling like a disturbed sea. The pearl's resonance tugged harder, a steady thrum that vibrated through his chest, but with it came a new sensation, a prickle at the nape of his neck, a whisper of malice. He paused, scanning the haze, and saw it. A flicker of shadow, swift and serpentine, flitting at the edges of his vision, testing his resolve. It was multi-eyed, tendrils trailing a fragment of the sanctum's thief. Evan's hand tightened on the Foreward, his pulse quickening, but before he could act, the ash erupted. A trio of shadowy entities burst forth lithe, Humanoid forms cloaked in darkness, their limbs elongated and jointed like insects, yellow eyes glowing in featureless faces. They lunged, claws slashing silently. Evan pivoted, Furba flashing. Om Bahasar Kili Kilaya, he chanted, severing a claw in a burst of shadow, then piercing a skull. The third retreated, melting into the ash, but the hum intensified a growl rattling the trees. 5 more emerged bulbous oil-slick forms, eyes of crimson, yellow, and violet, studding their torsos, barbed tendrils whipping from their backs. The air reeked of rot as Evan entered the 4th dhyana, time slowing. Sarver Bingni Bam Hum Fet, he intoned, cleaving tendrils and bursting a core, ash soaking the ground. He dodged a barb, rolling as another cratered the stone, dispatching the rest with relentless precision. The ground trembled, a subterranean roar heralding the next wave. Dozens surged forth a horde-defying form, skeletal shadows with ember eyes, amorphous blobs sprouting limbs, towering reptilians with obsidian teeth and lashing tails. Om Bahasar Kili Kilaya Sarver, Evan chanted, Furba spinning. He shattered skeletons, pierced blobs, and leaped from reptilian jaws, a claw grazing his arm, blood streaking. Pain flared, but he pressed on, the 4th dhyana, a shield. A voice cut through the chaos, sibilant, mocking. Evan, my old friend, it purred, venom and mirth entwined. From the haze stepped Aleister Crowley's specter-tattered ceremonial robes, void eyes beneath a high forehead, a sardonic grin. Book 1's malevolent enigma now loomed, a puppet master of shadows. You thought me vanquished, he sneered, but I endure, bending your precious unborn. He raised a hand, and the horde parted, revealing a grotesque, crab-like entity evolved from the cognitive arthropods Evan once subdued. Its carapace gleamed with shadow, segmented legs spiked with barbs, mandibles clicking, a dozen crimson eyes weeping ichor, tendrils writhing. Evan's stomach clenched, memory flashing to that cell, the Furba's triumph. You guard nothing now, Crowley taunted, the crab lunging. Your pearl feeds my design, Evan chanted louder. Hum Fet, rolling aside and striking a leg, then a mandible, ichor splattering. Crowley laughed, and bat-like shadows dove green-eyed, wings tattered. Evan swung wide, bursting them, but the crab's tendrils lashed his legs. He stumbled, breath ragged, and Crowley flickered closer. Surrender, Black Dragon, or watch your order crumble. Guilt surged Pamela, Agnes, the temple but Evan's will held. Om Bahasar Kali Kalea Sarver Bing Nabam Hum Fet, he roared, shattering the crab's carapace. It dissolved, and Crowley's specter wavered, retreating into the haze. The horde thinned, Evan sinking to a knee, Furba planted, robes tattered, blood and ash streaking. The pearl's pulse flared closer now, but the multi-eyed shadow lingered, watching. You cannot stop me, Evan rasped, rising, resuming his march, Crowley's threat a fire in his soul. Chapter 3. The Monastery of Shadows. The wasteland stretched on, an endless shroud of ash and haze that gnawed at Evan's resolve with every step. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of charred stone, and a faint metallic tang that clung to the back of his throat. His black robes, tattered from the shadowy onslaught of the previous day, dragged against the cracked earth, their galactic patterns dulled by dust and blood. The meteoric Furba swayed at his hip, its naga-etched blades streaked with the remnants of dissolved foes, a silent testament to the battles behind him. In his satchel, the quartz fragment pulsed faintly, a fragile echo of the temple's sanctum, but it was the Mani Pearl's resonance that drove him forward, a thrumming pulse growing stronger, a beacon piercing the fog of his dulled perception. Evan's boots crunched over the ash, each stride a testament to years of Black Dragon discipline. His breath flowed in the rhythm of spirit, breathing inhale, chi rising from his dantian, exhale, energies seeking the pearl's light. The wasteland's timelessness blurred the hours, the diffuse glow overhead unchanging. Yet the terrain grew harsher. Jagged spires of rock loomed from the haze, their surfaces etched with runes that flickered like dying embers, casting faint crimson shadows that danced at the edge of his vision. Skeletal trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the sky as if pleading for release, their bark peeling away to reveal hollows that whispered with the wind's keening lament. The hum that had haunted him since he left the temple deepened, a subterranean drone that vibrated through his bones, promising more trials ahead. His pursuit intensified with every mile, the pearl's pulse a drumbeat in his chest, drawing him toward a distant rise where the haze thickened into shadow. Sweat beaded on his brow, mingling with ash to streak his face in gritty trails, and his muscles ached from the relentless march, a dull throb radiating from his grazed arm. Yet, his mind remained sharp, honed by the fourth Diana, a sanctuary of clarity amidst the wasteland's chaos. The shadowy entities from the previous assault lingered in his thoughts, humanoids with insect-like limbs, bulbous horrors with whip-thin tendrils, the grotesque crab-like nightmare fueled by Crowley's spectral taunts. That final sneer, "Your pearl feeds my design," echoed in his memory, a venomous barb Evan had silenced with the Furba's mantra. Crowley was gone, a vanquished echo, but the thief's minions remained, and the pearl's fate hung in the balance like a fragile thread over an abyss. As he crested the rise, the wasteland unveiled a new torment. The ash gave way to a shallow basin, its floor a mosaic of shattered stone tiles gleaming faintly in the gloom, their edges worn smooth by eons of unseen winds. At its center loomed a crumbling monastery, an ancient edifice of weathered granite, its walls pitted and scarred as if clawed by some titan's wrath, its spires leaning like broken teeth against the sky. Windows gaped empty, their frames choked with vines of shadow that writhed as if alive, their tips glistening with a sheen of dark ichor. A faint keening echoed from within, a sound that was both lament and lure, threading through the air like a siren's call. The pearl's resonance surged, a clarion call from the monastery's depths, its rhythm syncing with Evan's heartbeat. But with it came a prickle of malice, a whisper of ambush that set his nerves alight. Before he could advance, the air warped a ripple of distortion that split the haze and birthed a swarm of illusions. The first wave erupted from the tile's 6 shadowy figures, humanoid and lithe, their limbs elongated and jointed like insects, yellow eyes glowing in featureless faces. Their claws slashed silently, cutting through the air with a hiss, and Evan drew the Furba, its blade flashing as he stepped into their midst. "Om Bahasar Kilai Kilaya," he chanted, rolling the dagger between his palms, the mantra a shield of sound that reverberated across the basin. He severed a claw in a burst of shadow that dissolved into ash, pivoted to pierce a skull with a wet crunch, and drove off the rest, their forms melting back into the ground like spilled ink. His breath steadied, the fourth Diana anchoring him, but the monastery's shadow stirred, undeterred. A second wave surged forth 8 bulbous entities, their oil-slick surfaces rippling like disturbed water, eyes of crimson, yellow, and violet studding their torsos in a chaotic mosaic. Barbed tendrils whipped from their backs, their tips glistening with venomous dew, and the air thickened with a stench of rot that stung Evan's nostrils. He deepened his stance, chi flowing in a steady tide, and intoned, "Sarver bing ni bam hum fet." Time slowed as he struck, the Furba a blur cleaving through tendrils in sprays of inky mist, bursting a core that soaked the tiles in ash, dodging a barb that cratered the stone inches from his boot. He rolled, driving the dagger upward into another's underbelly, its collapse a shuddering quake, and dispatched the rest with relentless precision, their eyes winking out like extinguished stars. The battle escalated as the monastery's keening sharpened, a third wave pouring from its shadowed threshold, a horde-defying form, dozens strong. Skeletal shadows clattered forward, their bones wrought of darkness, ember eyes glowing in hollow sockets, claws raking the tiles with a sound like scraping metal. Amorphous blobs oozed beside them, sprouting limbs and eyes at random, their surfaces crawling with tendrils that snapped like whips. Towering above loomed reptilian giants, their scaled hides shimmering with shadow, jaws lined with obsidian teeth, tails lashing the air with thunderous cracks. Evan's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of their malice, and he raised the Furba, its blade catching the faint light. "Om Bahasar Kali Kalea Sarver," he chanted, voice rising above the hum, and plunged into the fray. The skeletal entities reached him first, claws slashing in a flurry. Evan swung the furba in wide arcs, shattering their forms into dust that swirled around him, his robes billowing with each strike. An amorphous blob surged, tendrils coiling around his legs, its grip cold and slick, but he thrust the dagger downward, piercing its core with a soundless wail that vibrated through his skull. It dissolved, releasing him, and he leaped aside as a reptilian tail cracked the ground where he'd stood, the tiles splintering into shards that stung his face. He countered, driving the furba into a reptilian jaw, its teeth snapping shut inches from his arm, and twisted the blade until it crumbled, ash raining down. Blood streaked his arms, shallow gashes blooming red, but the fourth Diana dulled the pain, his focus unyielding. The horde pressed closer, a relentless tide, when a flash of light cut through the chaos. From the monastery's shadowed maw emerged two figures, Pamela and Agnes, locked in combat with their own illusions. Pamela wielded the furba Evan had gifted her in Book 1, its blade a streak of silver as she chanted, Om Bahasar Kili Kilaya Sarver, banishing a skeletal shadow with a thrust that sent it spiraling into dust. Her robes, once a pristine white, hung torn and stained, her face set with fierce determination, sweat plastering dark strands of hair to her brow. Beside her, Agnes stood serene, her silver medallion of the great other tree gleaming against her chest, its branches catching the faint light. She spoke no words, only a silent prayer drawn from the cloud of Unknowing, her unknowing aura unraveling a swarm of bat-like illusions into wisps of smoke, their green eyes winking out. Evan's heart leapt, a surge of relief cutting through his weariness like a blade through shadow. He fought his way toward them, the furba a whirlwind as he shattered a reptilian spine and pierced an amorphous blob, its tendrils flailing in death throes. Pamela's eyes met his across the basin, a spark of recognition igniting, and she thrust her furba skyward, its mantra banishing a towering shadow that crumbled mid-roar. Agnes turned, her gaze piercing the haze, and with a gesture, dissolved a clutch of humanoid illusions, their claws falling limp. Together, they converged at the monastery's edge, the last of the illusions dissolving into ash under their combined assault, leaving only the keening silence and the pearl's insistent pulse. The reunion unfolded in the shadow of the ruined walls, a moment of stillness amidst the storm. Evan lowered his furba, its blade clattering against the tiles, his breath ragged from battle and emotion. Pamela's face softened, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and she stepped forward, her hand trembling as it brushed his arm, fingers tracing the edge of a fresh gash. "Evan," she whispered, her voice a balm to his soul, cracking with the weight of years apart. "You're here." Agnes stood beside her, the medallion's branches shimmering faintly, her expression a blend of warmth and quiet strength. The lines of her face etched deeper by the trials she'd endured. "We've missed you," she said simply, her words a gentle anchor, carrying the resonance of their shared past. Evan's throat tightened, guilt and gratitude warring within him like twin tides. "I thought I'd lost you both," he rasped, his voice hoarse from the mantra and the strain of combat. "The temple, the pearl, I had to leave." Pamela shook her head, stepping closer, and clasped his hand in hers, her grip fierce despite the tremble. "You never lost us," she said, her tone resolute, eyes blazing with a fire he remembered from their battle against Mara. "We fought him together, me with this." She lifted her furba, its blade notched from use, and Agnes with her light. "We've carried you with us, every step, through every shadow." Agnes nodded, her hand resting on the medallion, fingers tracing its branches as if drawing strength from their growth. "The 5 Dhyani Buddhas stood with us then," she recounted, her voice soft yet resonant, a thread of memory weaving through the air. "Vairocana's wisdom burned away Mara's lies. Amitabha's compassion held us when we faltered. I can still feel the plateau trembling, Pamela's chant cutting through the storm. Your furba in her hands, a piece of you we never let go." Evan's eyes traced the medallion, recalling that windswept triumph from Meet the Buddhas, Pamela's courage as she thrust the dagger skyward, Agnes's serenity as she unraveled the demon's illusions, their victory a beacon that had guided him even in the temple's depths. He sank to one knee, not from exhaustion, but reverence, the tiles cool against his skin, and looked up at them, his vision blurring with rare tears. "I've walked the temple's halls, borne its discipline," he said, voice steadying as he spoke. "But you're my anchor beyond its walls. I left you to chase the Unborn, to guard the Pearl, but every chant, every breath, I felt you with me. I'm grateful more than words can hold for the light you've kept alive." Pamela knelt beside him, her furba clattering to the stone, and pulled him into an embrace. Her arms fierce and trembling, her breath warm against his shoulder as she buried her face in his tattered robes. "We're together now," she murmured, her voice muffled but resolute. "That's what matters then, now, always." Agnes joined them, her presence a quiet pillar, and placed a hand on Evan's head, her touch echoing the primordial's blessing from years past, a gesture of continuity that bridged their journeys. "The Unborn binds us," she said, her tone a soft melody against the monastery's keening. "Through battle, through time, through the shadows we've faced. This is no chance meeting our paths were always meant to cross here." Evan felt the tears spill, a crack in his black dragon stoicism he didn't fight, and clasped their hands, Pamela's calloused from the furba, Agnes's steady with the weight of her wisdom. They rose together, the monastery's shadows looming, the Pearl's pulse a shared call thrumming in their bones. Pamela wiped her eyes with a sleeve, her gaze sharpening as she glanced at the monastery's gaping entrance. "We've faced illusions here," she said, voice firming with purpose. "Skeletal things, tendrils that tried to drag us down, but something darker waits inside." "Something tied to your pearl," Agnes nodded, her hand tightening on the medallion. "It's a presence older than these walls," she added. "A corruption that feeds on the light we carry." Evan straightened, the reunion's warmth stealing his resolve, and gripped his furba anew. "The pearl's close," he replied, meeting their eyes with a determination born of their bond. "I've tracked it this far alone, but I'll need you both to reclaim it." They stepped into the monastery's threshold as one, a trinity forged anew, the air within cool and damp, heavy with the scent of mold and ancient stone. The interior yawned before them, a cavernous hall of collapsed arches and shattered pews, its walls draped with curtains of shadow that writhed like living vines. The pearl's resonance pulsed louder, a heartbeat echoing through the granite, but the keening sharpened into a growl, a promise of the darkness to come. Evan glanced at Pamela and Agnes, their faces set with the same resolve he felt, and nodded. "Together," he said, and they advanced, gratitude a silent vow binding them as they faced the monastery's depths. Chapter 4. The Pearl's Whisper. The crumbling monastery loomed around them, its cavernous hall a sanctuary of shadow and silence after the battle's chaos. The air within was cool and damp, heavy with the scent of mold and ancient stone, a stark contrast to the wasteland's acrid bite. Collapsed arches leaned precariously overhead, their granite surfaces pitted with age, while shattered pews lay scattered across the floor like the bones of some forgotten congregation. Curtains of shadow draped the walls, writhing like living vines, their tips glistening faintly in the dim light that seeped through cracked windows. The Mani Pearl's resonance pulsed louder here, a heartbeat echoing through the stone, its rhythm a tether that bound Evan, Pamela, and Agnes together as they stepped deeper into the gloom. Evan paused near the hall's center, his tattered robes settling around him, the furba still gripped in his hand, its blade streaked with the ash of vanquished illusions. His breath was steady now, the adrenaline of combat fading into a bone-deep weariness that tugged at his limbs. Pamela stood beside him, her own furba clattering to the tiles as she wiped sweat from her brow, her dark hair plastered against her face in damp strands. Agnes lingered a step behind, her silver medallion of the great other tree catching the faint light, its branches shimmering as if alive with quiet purpose. The keening that had haunted the monastery softened to a whisper, a lull that invited rest, and Evan felt the weight of their reunion settle over him like a mantle. "We need to stop," he said, his voice hoarse but firm, cutting through the stillness. "The pearl's close, I can feel it, but we're no good to it exhausted." Pamela nodded, her eyes tracing the hall's shadows with wary precision, then sank to the floor, resting her back against a toppled pew. "Agreed," she murmured, pulling her knees close, the furba resting across her lap like a talisman. "Whatever's in here, It's waiting. We'll face it stronger after rest." Agnes knelt beside her, folding her robes beneath her with a grace that belied the day's trials, and placed a hand on Pamela's shoulder. "The Unborn grants us this pause," she said softly, her gaze meeting Evan's. "Take it, Evan. We're together now." He hesitated, the pearl's pulse urging him onward, but the ache in his body and the trust in their eyes won out. He lowered himself to the tiles, the cold seeping through his robes, and set the furba beside him, its meteoric iron gleaming faintly. From his satchel, he drew the vial of consecrated water and the pressed rice, offering them to Pamela and Agnes with a silent nod. They shared the meager provisions, Pamela sipping first, then passing it to Agnes, who murmured a quiet blessing before drinking. The rice followed, its dry texture a small comfort against the hunger gnawing at their bellies. The act was simple, a ritual of survival, but it bound them closer, a thread of normalcy in the monastery's eerie embrace. The shadows seemed to recede as they settled, the writhing vines stilling, and Evan leaned against a cracked pillar, his head tilting back to rest against the stone. Pamela stretched out beside him, her furba within reach, her breathing slowing into a rhythm that mirrored his own spirit breathing. Agnes sat cross-legged, the medallion cradled in her hands, her eyes half closed in a meditative calm. The pearl's pulse thrummed through the hall, a lullaby that wove through the silence, and Evan's lids grew heavy, the exhaustion of days blurring into a haze. "Sleep," Pamela whispered, her voice a soft echo, and he let it carry him under, the monastery fading as darkness claimed him. In the dream, Evan stood alone on a plain of infinite light, a radiant void that stretched beyond comprehension, its brilliance both blinding and serene. The wasteland, the monastery, the battles all dissolved, leaving only this expanse, a sea of luminescence that pulsed with a presence older than time. His robes were whole again, shimmering with the galactic patterns of the black dragons, and the furba hung weightless at his side, its blade aglow with a silver fire. Before him hovered the Mani Pearl, larger than he'd ever seen it, a crystalline orb the size of a man's torso, its surface alive with an inner radiance that shifted through hues of gold, indigo, and white colors of countless Buddhas, a hymn made manifest. The pearl's light enveloped him, and a voice emerged not spoken, but felt, a resonance that vibrated through his being, deep and eternal. "Behold," it intoned, and the void rippled, unveiling the Dharmakaya, the essential nature of all existence, the uncreated ground of reality. Evan's breath caught as the light coalesced into a vision, a boundless mandala, its edges dissolving into infinity, its center a luminous core that pulsed with the same rhythm as the pearl. Within it danced forms Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their bodies wrought of light, their faces serene yet fathomless, radiating compassion and wisdom in all 10 directions. Vairocana blazed at the heart, his white radiance dissolving form. Aksobya's blue calm anchored the east, Amitabha's red love the west, each a facet of the Dharmakaya's unity. The pearl floated closer, its surface reflecting the mandala, and Evan saw it anew, not as a mere relic, but as an intricate image of the Dharmakaya itself, a mirror of the unborn mind. Its light was not its own. It was a conduit, a key that unveiled the mysteries of existence, stripping away the skandhas of illusion to reveal the radiant void beneath. The voice swelled, a chorus of countless lightbringers. "This is the truth," it sang, "the essence beyond birth and death, the source of all Buddhas." The Mani Pearl holds its image, its power to awaken the sleeping mind, to bridge the lower and higher, to manifest the deathless. Evan reached out, his hand trembling as it brushed the pearl's surface, and the vision deepened. He saw the Temple of the Black Dragons, not its obsidian halls, but its purpose. A sanctuary built to guard this truth, to nurture the pearl's light, to guide sentient beings toward the Dharmakaya's embrace. Without it, the temple was hollow, its chants mere echoes, its discipline a shadow of intent. The pearl was its heart, the key to its mysteries, and its loss threatened not just the order, but the Dharma's very foundation, a plunge into the long night of ignorance, a severance from the unborn. The mandala shifted, revealing a shadow, a writhing mass of eyes and tendrils, the thief that had torn the pearl away. It coiled around the relic, its darkness seeping into the light, twisting it into a false mirror that reflected only illusion. The voice grew urgent. If it falls, the Dharmakaya's image fades, and the temple crumbles. You are its guardian. Evan, its light is yours to reclaim. The pearl pulsed, its rhythm syncing with his heartbeat, and Evan felt its weight in his soul, a call to action, a vow etched in the void. He awoke with a gasp, the monastery's cold tiles jarring against his back, the dream's brilliance fading into the hall's gloom. Pamela stirred beside him, her furba clutched in sleep, while Agnes opened her eyes, the medallion gleaming as she met his gaze. The pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a tangible echo of the dream, and Evan sat up, his breath ragged, the furba cool in his hand. "I saw it," he whispered, voice trembling with awe. "The Dharmakaya, the Unborn itself, the pearl, it's not just a relic, it's the image of the truth, the key to the temple's purpose." Pamela blinked awake, her hand finding his. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice thick with sleep but sharpening with concern. Evan's eyes burned with realization, the dream's weight settling over him. "Without it, the black dragons have no reason to exist," he said, his tone resolute. "It unveils the Dharmakaya, holds its mysteries. If we don't reclaim it, the temple falls everything we've fought for, everything it stands for, lost to shadow." Agnes nodded, her expression grave. "Then we find it," she said simply, rising with a grace that belied the night's rest. Together. Evan stood, the dream's light afire in his chest, the stakes clearer than ever. The monastery's shadows stirred, the pearl's pulse a call to arms, and he gripped the furba tighter, Pamela and Agnes at his side. They were more than a trinity now. They were guardians of the Dharmakaya's image, and the night's rest had forged them anew for the battle ahead. Chapter 5. Agnes's Dark Session. The monastery's cavernous hall enveloped Evan, Pamela, and Agnes in a stillness that felt both sacred and foreboding, the aftermath of their reunion settling like dust on the ancient tiles. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the scent of mold and the faint echo of their shared breath, a fragile peace after the battle with the illusions. Evan stood near a cracked pillar, his tattered robes clinging to his frame, the furba resting against his thigh, its blade streaked with ash. Pamela sat cross-legged beside him, her own furba cradled in her lap, her dark hair still damp with sweat, her eyes tracing the shadows with a warrior's vigilance. Agnes knelt a few paces away, her silver medallion of the great other tree catching the dim light filtering through the broken windows, its branches shimmering as if alive with quiet intent. The Mani Pearl's pulse thrummed through the stone, a heartbeat that had guided them here, its rhythm a constant reminder of Evan's dream, the Dharmakaya's radiant truth, the pearl's role as its image, the temple's purpose hanging in the balance. Yet, the keening that had softened during their rest now sharpened, a growl rising from the monastery's depths, a malice that pressed against their senses like a gathering storm. Evan straightened, his hand tightening on the furba, the dream's urgency still burning in his chest. "It's close," he said, voice hoarse but resolute. "We need to move." Pamela nodded, rising with a fluid motion, her furba gripped anew. "Whatever's waiting, it's not done with us," she agreed, her tone edged with determination. But Agnes remained still, her eyes half closed, her hands resting lightly on the medallion. The air around her seemed to shift, a subtle thickening, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that stilled them both. "Not yet," she said softly, her gaze lifting to meet theirs, piercing through the gloom with a serenity that belied the danger. "There's more here than we've seen. We must know it, truly know it, before we face it." Evan frowned, the pearl's pulse urging action, but Agnes's calm held him. "Know what?" he asked, stepping closer, the tiles cold beneath his boots. Pamela tilted her head, curiosity mingling with caution. "The shadows?" she ventured. "They're stronger here, more than illusions." Agnes nodded, her fingers tracing the medallion's branches, and rose with a grace that seemed to defy the weariness etched into her face. "The thief," she said, her tone a quiet thunder. "It's not just a shadow. It has a name, a nature, a design. We must see it clearly, or we'll stumble blind into its trap." She stepped to the hall's center, where a ring of shattered tiles formed a crude circle, and gestured for them to join her. Evan hesitated, the warrior in him itching to press forward, but the dream's vision, the Dharmakaya's infinite light, echoed Agnes's words. Pamela moved first, settling beside her, the fervor resting across her knees, her trust in Agnes unspoken but absolute. Evan followed, lowering himself into the circle, the three of them forming a trinity bound by purpose and history. The shadows on the walls stirred, the vines quivering as if sensing their intent, and the pearl's pulse quickened, syncing with their breaths. "What do we call it?" Evan asked, his voice low, the memory of Crowley's taunts and the multi-eyed thief flickering in his mind. "That thing that took the pearl." Pamela nodded, her brow furrowing. "It's more than a shadow," she said, testing the words. Vinyapti Matru? She stumbled over the pronunciation, her lips twisting in frustration. Evan tried next, his tongue grappling with the unfamiliar shape. "Vinjapti Matra?" he ventured, the syllables clumsy, his black dragon precision faltering. Agnes's eyes gleamed, a faint smile touching her lips, and she raised a hand to still them. "Vinyapti Matra," she said, her voice clear and resonant, the Sanskrit rolling off her tongue with a precision that cut through the hall's gloom. Vinyapti Ma, Tra, the Jin, a soft, fluid nya sound, the emphasis on the ma, ringing like a bell. Evan and Pamela exchanged a glance, chastened but awed, and Pamela muttered, "Show off," though her grin softened the jab. Agnes's smile widened briefly, then faded into solemnity. "It's more than a name," she said. "It's a revelation, and we must see it fully." She closed her eyes, her hands resting on the medallion, and the air thickened further, a palpable shift that pressed against their skin like a rising tide. "Join me," she instructed, her voice a thread of calm in the growing tension. "Close your eyes. Let go of the light you cling to. This is a dark session, an unknowing to pierce the veil." Evan hesitated, the fourth Diana's clarity, his refuge. But Pamela's hand found his, her grip steady and warm, and he relented, shutting his eyes. The monastery faded, the pearl's pulse a distant hum, and Agnes's voice guided them into the void. The darkness was absolute, a sea of nothingness that swallowed form and sound, yet it pulsed with a presence her unknowing, a mystic art honed through years of silence and surrender. Evan felt his breath slow, Pamela's hand a lifeline anchoring him, and Agnes's voice wove through the void, soft yet unyielding. "See beyond the seen," she intoned, "beyond the known. The Vijnaptimatra is not born of this world, it is a parasite of the mind, a shadow cast by the Alaya Vijnana's tainted seeds." Images flickered, faint at first, a vast ocean of consciousness, its surface a mirror of calm, its depths a churning abyss of karmic residue. Memories and desires of countless beings swirling in an endless cycle, their colors muted gray, brown, the dull sheen of forgotten lives. The vision sharpened, and Evan saw it a writhing mass emerging from the ocean's depths, its form a chaos of tendrils and eyes, crimson, yellow, violet, blinking in a cacophony of awareness that assaulted the senses. Its tendrils coiled and snapped, their tips dripping with a black ichor that hissed as it struck the water, sending up plumes of acrid smoke. "It is mere representation," Agnes continued, her voice a beacon piercing the tumult, a distortion of perception, feeding on the skandha's form, sensation, thought to weave a false reality. The entity swelled, its tendrils wrapping around a radiant orb, the Mani Pearl, its golden light dimming as the shadow leached its essence, twisting it into a sickly green that pulsed with malice. Pamela's grip tightened, a sharp gasp escaping her lips, and Evan's chest ached, the dream's truth warping into a nightmare. Agnes pressed deeper, her unknowing peeling back layers like a knife through flesh. "Its origin is ancient," she said, her tone steady as the vision flared, born in the moment sentient minds first grasped at illusion, mistaking the shadow for the light. The ocean receded, revealing a primordial void, a formless expanse, where faint silhouettes flickered, the first beings to cling to form, their desires birthing ripples that coalesced into the entity's seed. It grew in the Alaya's undercurrents, she intoned, a cancer of delusion, feeding on every false thought, every grasping soul, until it gained a will to unmake the truth. The seed swelled, tendrils sprouting like roots through the void, eyes blinking open as it fed, its form solidifying into the monstrous mass they faced. The vision shifted, the pearl's light inverting under Vijnaptimatra's touch gold, turning to a festering green, indigo to a pitch black that swallowed stars, a grotesque mirror reflecting not the Dharmakaya, but a damnable abyss. The mandala of Buddha's Evan had seen in his dream warped Vairocana's serene face contorted into a snarl, his radiance snuffed into a sickly glow, Amitabha's compassion twisted into despair, his red light bleeding into a void that devoured hope. The cosmos trembled, galaxies spiraling inward, their edges fraying as stars winked out, consumed by a darkness that pulsed with the entity's rhythm. Planets cracked, their surfaces splitting to reveal writhing tendrils, and the sky shattered, fragments raining down like broken glass into an endless maw. "It stole the pearl," Agnes intoned, her voice a lifeline as the horror unfolded, to invert its power, to render the Dharmakaya against its true nature. The pearl's inverted light flared, a beacon of corruption, and the cosmos unmade itself, time unraveling, space collapsing, the infinite mandala fracturing into a grotesque parody of itself. Evan saw the temple's spires crumble, their obsidian reduced to dust, the black dragon's chants silenced as the void swallowed their light. Shadows of past black dragons emerged from the chaos-cloaked figures wielding furbus, their faces obscured, their voices a chorus of warning. "Guard the pearl," they intoned, their tones overlapping in a desperate plea, "or the Dharmakaya falls. The temple is nothing without its truth. Its light is ours to preserve." Their forms flickered, consumed by the tendrils, their furbas clattering into the abyss as Vijnaptimatra's laughter, a soundless roar, echoed through the void. "With it," Agnes continued, her voice cutting through the din, "Vijnaptimatra seeks to tear asunder the very cosmos, to transmute the unborn into a nightmare of eternal delusion, a realm where no light endures." The vision peaked, a universe unmade, the stars gone, the Buddhas extinguished, the Dharmakaya's unity shattered into a grotesque, damnable mockery. Its essence inverted into a pulsating core of shadow that fed on itself, endless and insatiable. Pamela's breath hitched, her hand trembling in Evan's, and his heart pounded, the stakes of his dream magnified into a cosmic abyss that threatened all existence. The dark session receded, the void fading like mist burned away by dawn, and the monastery's hall returned, its shadows quivering with renewed menace. Evan opened his eyes, his breath ragged, sweat beading on his brow as Pamela's hand remained clasped in his, her fingers digging into his palm with a fierceness born of fear and defiance. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with the afterimage of the unmaking, her furba trembling in her other hand as she struggled to steady her breath. That can't happen," she whispered, voice cracking, then hardening into steel. "We can't let it." She turned to Agnes, her gaze blazing. "You saw that, felt it. How do we stop it?" Agnes exhaled slowly, the medallion glowing faintly in her hands, her face etched with a quiet sorrow that belied her calm. Her eyes met Pamela's, then Evan's, and she nodded, the weight of the vision settling over her like a mantle. "We stop it by reclaiming the pearl," she said, her tone resolute, though a tremor of awe lingered beneath it. "It's not just the temple at stake, it's the Dharmakaya, the cosmos, the light we've sworn to carry." Vijnaptimatra's power grows with every moment it holds the pearl, twisting it further. "We've seen its design now, there's no turning back." Evan released Pamela's hand, rising to his feet, the furba cool in his grip as he steadied himself against the pillar. His chest heaved, the dream and the dark session merging into a singular, searing truth. The pearl was the key to the Dharmakaya's mysteries, and its loss was a wound that could unmake reality itself. "Vijnaptimatra," he said, testing the name Vijnaptimatra, his tongue finding the rhythm under Agnes's guidance, the syllables a vow etched in sound that echoed through the hall. His voice steadied, the warrior's resolve drowning out the tremor of fear. "I saw the temple fall, the black dragon silenced. Without the pearl, we're nothing. I won't let that happen." Pamela stood beside him, her furba gripped tight, and echoed the name Vijnaptimatra, her pronunciation clearer now, honed by Agnes's correction, her eyes blazing with a defiance that mirrored his own. "It wants to break everything we've fought for," she said, her voice rising, fierce and unyielding. Mara was nothing compared to this. "We beat him with the Buddhas, with your furba," she nodded to Evan, "and we'll beat this too. For the pearl, for the light." Her hand brushed his arm, a fleeting touch that grounded him, her resolve a fire that burned away the vision's despair. Agnes rose last, the medallion a beacon in her hands, its branches casting faint shadows across the tiles as she extended her hands to them. "Together," she said, her voice a quiet command, the mystic certainty anchoring their fury and fear. "The unknowing has shown us the truth, its origin, its intent. It's a parasite, but it's not invincible. The pearl's light is stronger if we can reclaim it." She paused, her gaze softening as it lingered on them, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her stoicism. "You're my strength, both of you. This is why we're here, why we've always been bound." Evan met her eyes, the weight of her words sinking in, and nodded, the furba a steady presence in his grip. Pamela stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his, a silent vow of unity. The hall trembled again, the shadows surging as if roused by their defiance, the pearl's pulse a call to arms that thrummed through their bones. They stood as one, Agnes's unknowing their shield, the truth of Vijnaptimatra their weapon, the Mani Pearl's fate their destiny, and faced the darkness, ready for the trials that awaited beyond the monastery's depths. Chapter 6. Evan's Mind Realm, the Echoes of Duty. The monastery's hall dissolved in a heartbeat, the shadows surging with a force that tore Evan from Pamela and Agnes, the rift swallowing him whole. His senses spun, the Mani Pearl's pulse a fleeting echo as darkness engulfed him, a void that pressed against his skin like a living thing, cold and suffocating. Then, with a jolt, he landed knees buckling against a cold, unyielding surface, the air thick with a metallic tang that coated his tongue, bitter and sharp, mingling with the faint scent of charred stone. He rose slowly, the furba still in his hand, its meteoric iron a familiar weight, but he paused, Agnes's words from the dark session ringing in his ears. "Vijnaptimatra, a distortion of perception, feeding on the skandhas." This was no battlefield to conquer with a blade. It was a mind realm, a trap woven from his own psyche by the entity's will, a psychic labyrinth tailor-made to break him. The dimension unfurled around him, a warped mirror of the temple of the Black Dragon's crystal sanctum, yet twisted into a grotesque parody that clawed at his senses. The obsidian walls stretched into an oppressive infinity, their surfaces no longer veined with luminescent threads, but cracked and weeping a black ichor that pooled on the floor, its oily sheen reflecting a sky of churning gray clouds, their edges tinged with a sickly yellow glow. The court spires jutted upward, jagged and malformed, their once brilliant facets dimmed to a flickering, jaundiced hue that cast writhing shadows across the stone, shadows that pulsed like living veins. The air hummed, not with the resonant chants of the black dragons, but with a dissonant drone, a cacophony of whispers that clawed at his mind, accusing, pleading, demanding, each voice a shard of his own doubt amplified into a storm. The Mani Pearl's pedestal stood at the center, empty and fractured, its iron and jade splintered as if struck by a titan's fist, a silent rebuke to his failure that echoed through the hollow space. Evan's chest tightened, his breath catching as the dream of the Dharmakaya flashed through him, the radiant mandala, the pearl's role as its image, the temple's purpose hanging in the balance, followed by Agnes's vision of Vijnaptimatra's cosmic threat. This realm was no random construct. It was a psychological prison built from his deepest skandhas form, sensation, perception, mental formations, consciousness, each component. A thread the entity had spun to ensnare him, a mirror reflecting his inner struggles with merciless clarity. He lowered the furba, its blade gleaming faintly, resisting the urge to chant its mantra, a reflex that had carried him through too many battles. Mind alone, he thought, recalling the primordial's words from the Unborn Odyssey. There is naught to be seized. He had to dismantle this trap, not destroy it, peeling back its layers to uncover the truth beneath. The first illusion emerged, a figure stepping from the shadows near the pedestal, clad in black dragon robes identical to his own, their galactic patterns swirling with a mocking sheen. Its face was obscured by a hood, its presence a weight that pressed against his senses, a cold pressure that seeped into his bones. "You failed," it said, voice a distorted echo of his own, sharp with accusation, dripping with contempt. "The pearl is gone because you were weak, too slow, too blind to guard what mattered." Evan's guilt surged, a visceral ache in his gut, the skanda of sensation flaring his body, remembering every moment of doubt, every wound from the Wasteland's trials, the sting of sweat in his grazed arm, the tremor in his hands as the thief had torn the pearl away. Past memories flickered the cell in Book 1, his ear pressed to the crevice, the luminous light of the unborn Buddha mind slipping beyond his grasp. The Wasteland's horde, their claws raking his flesh as Crowley's specter sneered. He took a breath, centering his chi with spirit-breathing inhale, warmth rising. Exhale, energies flowing not to fight, but to observe. "You're my fear," he said, voice steady despite the ache, not the truth. The figure wavered, its edges fraying like smoke, but it didn't dissolve, shifting instead into a chorus of voices that swelled around him. More figures materialized, dozens, then hundreds past black dragons rising from the ichor-soaked floor, their robes tattered and stained, their faces hollow with despair, eyes glowing crimson beneath shadowed hoods. They encircled him, a tightening noose, their voices a psychic barrage that struck his perception, the skanda of thought twisting his reality into a kaleidoscope of failure. "You let us fall," they intoned, their tones overlapping in a dirge of judgment, "betrayed the order that forged you. The temple crumbles because of you, its spires dust, its purpose lost, its light snuffed out by your incompetence." Evan saw it in his mind's eye, the sanctum's walls collapsing, quartz spires shattering into dull fragments, the eternal chant silenced, a vision echoing Agnes's dark session of the cosmos unmade. "You were never worthy," they hissed, their taunts deepening. "A pretender in robes, a child playing at duty while the Dharmakaya fades." His duty, forged through years of discipline in the temple's halls, became a chain, binding him to their condemnation, each word a weight that pressed his shoulders down. He clenched his fists, the furba trembling in his grip, the instinct to chant rising like bile, but he plunged into the fourth dhyana instead, not to banish, but to see. The whispers grew louder, a storm of mental formations, pride in his black dragon title swelling into arrogance, shame at his failure curdling into despair, the relentless need to prove himself a mantra of its own that had driven him since the ruined church. "You abandoned your vows," the dragons accused, their voices sharpening into a chorus of scorn, "left the temple to rot while you chased glory. What guardian forsakes his post?" Memories surged, kneeling before the grand black dragon supreme during his initiation, the staff's thunderclap as he was anointed, the weight of the robes a promise he'd sworn to uphold. The Wasteland's rise, the church's specters mocking his resolve, a seeker's desperation he'd thought buried. Vijnaptimatra had seized these threads, spinning them into a prison of self-judgment. "You're not real," Evan said, his voice cutting through the drone, firm but quiet, a blade of awareness against the storm. "You're my clinging, my need, to be the guardian, to bear the light alone, to prove I'm enough." The figures faltered, their forms blurring at the edges, their crimson eyes dimming as he stripped away the skanda of consciousness. He saw himself not the adept he'd become, but the novice from Book 1, stumbling through the church's ruins, grasping at external truths with desperate hands, the primordial's words a distant whisper he'd failed to fully hear. There is no entity to cling to. This realm fed on that Evan, the boy who'd sought the way as a prize, not a surrender, and magnified his duty into a suffocating trap. The sanctum shifted, its walls contracting with a groan, the ichor rising to lap at his boots, its cold seeping into his bones, a sensation that prickled his skin and tightened his chest. A new vision rose, the grand black dragon supreme, towering and stern, emerging from the shadows near the pedestal, his robes shimmering with the void's darkness, his staff striking the floor with a thunderclap that echoed through the realm. "You are unworthy," he boomed, voice a lash against Evan's soul, deep and resonant, each syllable a hammer against his resolve. "A failure to the order, to the Dharmakaya, to the light you swore to protect. You let the pearl slip through your fingers, your weakness has doomed us all." The skanda of form anchored Evan to the image his body, his identity as a black dragon. The weight of his robes, a yoke that bowed his shoulders. The ache of his grazed arm, a reminder of his frailty. "Look at you," the Supreme sneered, his onyx eyes narrowing, bloodied, tattered, a shadow of what we forged. "The temple trusted you, and you betrayed it. Your hands are empty. Your purpose, a lie." Evan's breath hitched, memories flooding back, kneeling in the crystal sanctum, the Supreme's hand on his head during initiation, a moment of pride now twisted into shame. The Wasteland's trials, his blood streaking the ash, his Furba's mantra, a desperate plea against the Horde. He wanted to raise the dagger, to chant and strike, to prove his worth, but Agnes's Unknowing echoed through him, pierced the veil. He lowered his hand, the Furba's weight pulling at his fingers, and faced the Supreme's image with steady eyes. "There is no failure," he said, voice soft but firm, letting go of the form he clung to. "The Dharmakaya is beyond me, beyond this body, this title. You're my pride, my need to be seen as its guardian. But the pearl's light isn't mine to own, it's the Unborn's, and it endures beyond my grasp." The Supreme's form flickered, his staff's glow dimming, the ichor receding from Evan's boots as the sanctum trembled, cracks spidering through the walls, the whispers softening into a murmur. The final illusion coalesced a vision of Pamela and Agnes, their forms rising from the ichor near the pedestal, their faces pale and drawn, their bodies broken and lifeless amidst the sanctum's ruins. Pamela's Furba lay snapped beside her, her hands limp, blood pooling beneath her torn robes. Agnes's medallion hung shattered, its branches twisted, her eyes staring blankly at the gray sky. "You abandoned us," they whispered, voices entwined in a haunting duet, frail yet piercing, "left us to die for your duty, your precious temple. We trusted you, Evan, and you chose the pearl over us, your friends, your family, cast aside like refuse." The skanda of sensation flared a new love for them, a warmth that turned to ice, guilt, a knife twisting in his gut, the ache of their absence, a physical weight that crushed his chest. Tears pricked his eyes, memories surging the plateau from Meet the Buddhas, Pamela's fierce chant against Mara, Agnes's serene prayer, their hands in his after the battle, the monastery's reunion, Pamela's embrace, Agnes's touch, a bond he'd feared lost. "You're alone now," they taunted, their voices deepening into a chorus of despair, "because you always were too proud, too driven, too blind to see us bleeding while you chased your light. We died calling your name, and you never came." Evan's knees buckled, the urge to clutch the Furba overwhelming, to chant and banish the pain, but he breathed instead, the fourth Diana, a shield of clarity against the storm. "No," he said, stepping toward them, his voice breaking but resolute, tears spilling down his ash-streaked face. "You're my strength, not my burden. Vinyapti Matra twists you, but I see you true alive, with me, in the Unborn. I didn't abandon you. I carry you here," he pressed a hand to his chest, "and I always will." The figures wavered, their broken forms softening, their whispers fading into silence, and the sanctum shuddered, its walls crumbling into dust, the ichor evaporating as light pierced the haze. The realm unraveled, the pearl's pulse flaring bright and steady, a lifeline pulling him back. Evan stood alone amidst the ruins, the dimension dissolving into a faint echo of the monastery's hall, Pamela and Agnes still lost to their own realms. He'd dismantled it not with the Furba, but with mind alone, stripping away the skandhas Vijnaptamatra had woven into this trap, the form of his duty, the sensation of his guilt, the perception of his failure, the mental formations of his pride, the consciousness of his isolation. The Furba lay at his feet, dropped in the final moment, its blade a tool he'd set aside to face the truth. He knelt, retrieving it with a steady hand, its weight no longer a crutch but a companion, and rose, the pearl's call sharper now, a rhythm that synced with his breath. The air around him shimmered, the rift's pull faint but growing, and he took a moment to reflect, the sanctum's echoes fading into silence. His duty wasn't to guard the pearl alone, it was to bear it with Pamela and Agnes, a shared light that transcended his failures. The temple's purpose, the Dharmakaya's truth, wasn't his to prove, it was theirs to uphold, a burden lightened by their bond. Vijnaptimatra had shown him his shadows, but in dismantling them, he'd found clarity not as a solitary black dragon, but as part of a trinity forged in the Unborn. Evan straightened, the furba at his side, and faced the haze, the monastery's hall flickering into view. Pamela and Agnes were still out there, wrestling their own realms, but he felt their presence, a thread of unity unbroken, a strength he'd carry into the battles ahead. The pearl's pulse steadied his resolve, and he waited, his mind clear, his purpose renewed, ready to reunite and face the entity that had dared to twist their light. Chapter 7. Pamela's Mind Realm, the Womb of Shadows. The monastery's hall vanished in a surge of shadow, the rift tearing Pamela from Evan and Agnes with a force that stole her breath, the Mani Pearl's pulse a fading echo as darkness swallowed her whole. Her senses reeled, the air turning thick and cloying, pressing against her skin like a damp shroud, until she landed feet sinking into a soft, yielding surface that pulsed faintly beneath her. She steadied herself. The furba Evan had gifted her gripped in her hand, its familiar weight a tether in the void, but she paused, Agnes' dark session resonating within her. Vijnaptimatra, a distortion of perception, feeding on the skandhas. This was no battlefield to conquer with chance. It was a mind realm, a psychic trap woven by the entity from her deepest fears and desires, a labyrinth she had to unravel with mind alone. The dimension unfurled around her, a grotesque parody of the Dharma womb she'd nurtured since Meet the Buddhas, the sacred space where her bodhicild grew, a beacon of light now twisted into a nightmare. The ground beneath her was a pulsing membrane, its surface slick and translucent, veined with dark tendrils that throbbed like a living heart, their rhythm a mocking echo of the pearl's pulse. Walls of shadow curved upward, forming a vast cavernous dome that shimmered with a sickly green sheen, as if coated in some amniotic slime, their surfaces rippling with faint, distorted reflections of her own face, eyes wide with dread, mouth open in a silent scream. The air was warm and humid, heavy with a sweet, rotting scent that clung to her throat, a perversion of the bodhicild's purity, and a low, keening wail reverberated through the space, a sound that tugged at her soul like a child's cry. Pamela's heart clenched, the memory of Evan's dream, and Agnes's vision flashing through her the pearl as the Dharmakaya's image, Vijnaptimatra's design to invert it into a cosmic abomination. This realm was no random illusion. It was tailor-made, a psychological prison built from her skandha's form, sensation, perception, mental formations. Consciousness each layer, a thread the entity had spun to trap her, reflecting her fears of losing the bodhicild, her guilt over past sacrifices, her need to protect. She lowered the furba, its blade catching the faint light, resisting the instinct to chant its mantra, a crutch she'd relied on too often. Mind alone, she thought, echoing Evan's resolve from the monastery. She had to dismantle this, not fight it, peeling back its illusions to find the truth beneath. The first illusion emerged a figure rising from the membrane near the center, its form a shadowy reflection of Pamela herself, clad in the white robe she'd worn in Meet the Buddhas, now stained with blood and ash. Its face was hers, but twisted eyes hollow, lips curled in a sneer, a mirror of self-doubt. "You failed," it hissed, voice a warped echo of her own, dripping with venom. "The bodhicild weakens because of you, your fear, your inadequacy." The skandha of sensation flared, a visceral pang in her womb, where the bodhicild rested, a warmth turned cold, a tremor of loss that echoed her first realization of its presence in Book 1, the awe of its light, now a stab of dread. Memories surged the plateau's battle against Mara, her furba raised, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas' radiance shielding her, the monastery's reunion, Evan's embrace, a fleeting peace now tainted by fear. She breathed, spirit breathing steadying her inhale, chi rising, exhale, energies flowing not to strike, but to see. "You're my doubt," she said, voice firm despite the ache, "not my truth." The figure wavered, its edges softening, but it shifted, its voice splitting into a chorus. More figures rose, dozens of shadowed children, their forms small and fragile, their faces blurred but achingly familiar, eyes glowing green with accusation as they encircled her. "You let us die," they wailed, a psychic assault that struck her perception, the skanda of thought twisting her reality into a gallery of loss. "You birthed us only to abandon us, your bodhicield, your hope, snuffed out by your weakness." Pamela saw it in her mind's eye, the bodhicield's light dimming, its radiant ember flickering out, a vision of stillbirth that mirrored Vinyaptimatra's inverted pearl. "You're no mother," they taunted, their voices deepening into a chorus of scorn, just a vessel too frail to hold the light, too selfish to protect it. Her role as its birthgiver, forged through spirit breathing and faith, became a chain, binding her to their judgment, each cry a weight that pressed her shoulders down. She clenched her fists, the furba trembling in her grip, the urge to chant rising, but she plunged into a meditative calm instead, not to banish, but to perceive. The wails grew louder, a storm of mental formations, pride in her connection to the bodhicield swelling into obsession, guilt over leaving Evan and Agnes curdling into despair, the relentless need to shield it, a mantra that had defined her since its conception. "You abandoned them for me," the children accused, their voices sharpening. "Left Evan to the temple, Agnes to her shadows, all for a light you couldn't save. You're a failure as a friend, a protector, your womb a tomb." Memories flooded Evan's farewell in Book 1, his furba in her hands, a promise she'd clung to. Agnes's medallion glowing in the monastery, a bond she'd feared breaking. Vinyaptimatra had seized these threads, spinning them into a prison of self-recrimination. "You're not real," Pamela said, her voice cutting through the wail. Steady but raw, a blade of awareness against the storm. "You're my clinging, my need to be its savior, to prove I'm enough for it." The children faltered, their forms blurring, their green eyes dimming as she stripped away the skanda of consciousness. She saw herself not the birth giver she'd become, but the woman from Book 2, trembling on the plateau, grasping at the bodhicield's light as a shield against her own fragility, a protector who'd sought its strength rather than her own. This realm fed on that Pamela, the one who'd feared loss above all and magnified her role into a suffocating trap. The womb shifted, its walls contracting with a wet, organic groan, the membrane beneath her pulsing faster, tendrils rising to brush her legs, their touch cold and slick, a sensation that prickled her skin and tightened her chest. A new vision rose her bodhicield, fully formed, emerging from the membrane, its body a radiant infant wreathed in light, but its face contorted, eyes black and hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. "You killed me," it whispered, voice a child's yet ancient, laced with betrayal, "sacrificed me to your fears, your doubts." The skanda of form anchored her to the image, her body, her identity as its mother, the warmth of its presence, a yoke that bowed her shoulders, the ache of its imagined loss, a knife in her womb. "You let the shadow take me," it taunted, its light dimming to a sickly green, "because you were too weak to hold me, too broken to fight." Memories surged the moment she'd felt it stir in Book 2, spirit breathing, igniting its breath, the monastery's rest, its pulse syncing with hers, a bond now twisted into despair. Pamela's breath hitched, tears welling as she faced the child, the urge to clutch the furba overwhelming, to chant and banish the pain, but Evan's resolve echoed through her. Mind alone. She lowered her hand, the furba's weight pulling at her fingers, and faced the vision with steady eyes. "There is no death," she said, voice soft but firm, letting go of the form she clung to. "You're my fear, my need to control your light. But the bodhicield is beyond me, beyond this body, this role. It's the Unborn's, and it endures beyond my grasp." The child's form flickered, its black eyes softening, the green glow fading as the membrane slowed, the tendrils receding from her legs, the walls trembling, cracks spidering through their slime. The final illusion coalesced a vision of Evan and Agnes, their forms rising from the membrane, their faces pale and drawn, their bodies broken amidst the womb's ruins. Evan's robes hung in tatters, his furba snapped, blood pooling beneath him. Agnes's medallion lay shattered, its branches twisted, her hands limp. "You abandoned us," they whispered, voices entwined in a haunting duet, frail yet piercing, "left us to die for your child, your precious light. We trusted you, Pamela, and you chose it over us, your friends, your family, cast aside like shadows." The skanda of sensation flared a new love for them, a warmth turned to ice, guilt a knife twisting in her gut, the ache of their imagined loss a weight that crushed her chest. "You're alone now," they taunted, their voices deepening, "because you always were too proud to need us, too selfish to save us. We died calling your name, and you turned away." Tears spilled down Pamela's face, memories surging the plateau's battle. Evan's furba in her hands, Agnes' prayer a shield against Mara, the monastery's embrace, Evan's warmth, Agnes's touch, a bond she'd feared fracturing. She sank to her knees, the membrane yielding beneath her, the furba slipping from her grasp to rest beside her, its blade a silent witness. But she breathed, spirit breathing a shield of clarity. Inhale, chi rising. Exhale, energies flowing and faced them, her voice breaking but resolute. "No," she said, tears streaking her face. "You're my strength, not my burden. Vinyapti Matra twists you, but I see you true alive, with me, in the Unborn. I didn't abandon you. I carry you here." She pressed a hand to her chest, then to her womb. With it, always. The figures wavered, their broken forms softening, their whispers fading into silence, and the womb shuddered, its walls crumbling, the membrane dissolving as light pierced the haze. The realm unraveled, the pearl's pulse flaring bright and steady, a lifeline pulling her back. Pamela knelt amidst the ruins, the dimension dissolving into a faint echo of the monastery's hall, Evan and Agnes still lost to their own realms. She dismantled it not with the furba, but with mind alone, stripping away the skandas Vijnapti Matra had woven, the form of her motherhood, the sensation of her guilt, the perception of her loss, the mental formations of her pride, the consciousness of her isolation. The furba lay at her side, dropped in the final moment, its blade a tool she'd set aside to face the truth. She retrieved it with a trembling hand, rising as the air shimmered, the rifts pull faint but growing, and took a moment to reflect, the womb's echoes fading into silence. Her duty wasn't to protect the Buddha-child alone, it was to nurture it with Evan and Agnes, a shared light that transcended her fears. The Bodhichild's purity, the Dharmakaya's truth, wasn't hers to prove, it was theirs to uphold, a bond strengthened by their unity. Vinyapti Matra had shown her shadows loss, isolation, failure, but in dismantling them, she'd found clarity not as a solitary birth-giver, but as part of a trinity forged in the Unborn. Her love for them, a strength, not a weakness. Pamela straightened, the furba at her side, and faced the haze, the monastery's hall flickering into view. Evan and Agnes were still out there, wrestling their own realms, but she felt their presence a thread of unity unbroken, a resilience she'd carry into the battles ahead. The pearl's pulse steadied her resolve, and she waited, her mind clear, her purpose renewed, ready to reunite and face the entity that had dared to twist their light. Chapter 8. Agnes's Mind Realm. The Veil of Unknowing. The monastery's hall shattered in an instant, the shadows surging with a force that ripped Agnes from Evan and Pamela, the rift swallowing her whole. Her senses spun, the Mani Pearl's pulse a fleeting whisper as darkness engulfed her, a void that pressed against her like a suffocating shroud, heavy with the weight of silence. Then, with a soft thud, she landed bare feet, sinking into a cool, damp mist that swirled around her ankles, the air thick with the scent of incense and decay, a cloying mix that stung her nostrils. She steadied herself, the silver medallion of the great other tree resting against her chest, its branches faintly warm, but she paused, her own words from the dark session echoing within. Vinyapti Matra, a distortion of perception, feeding on the skandhas. This was no battlefield to conquer with force. It was a mind realm, a psychic trap woven by the entity from her deepest vulnerabilities, a labyrinth she had to unravel with the unknowing of her mind. The dimension unfurled around her, a twisted reflection of the serene void she'd cultivated through years of mystic practice, now corrupted into a grotesque parody of her inner sanctuary. The ground was a sea of mist, its surface rippling like water, reflecting a sky of endless shadow, a black expanse pierced by faint, flickering stars that pulsed with a sickly violet glow, their light dimming and flaring as if struggling to breathe. Walls of vapor rose, forming a vast circular chamber that shimmered with a translucent sheen, their surfaces etched with shifting runes, ancient symbols of wisdom now distorted into jagged, mocking shapes. The air hummed with a low, mournful chant, a perversion of the cloud of Unknowing's silent prayer, each note a whisper that tugged at her soul, unraveling the calm she'd built over decades. At the center loomed a cracked altar, its stone surface stained with dark ichor, the medallion's twin resting atop it shattered, its branches twisted into thorns, a silent accusation of her failure. Agnes's heart tightened. Evan's dream of the Dharmakaya and her own dark session flashing through her the pearl as the truth's image, Vijnaptimatra's design to invert it into cosmic ruin. This realm was no random illusion. It was tailor-made, a psychological prison forged from her skandha's form, sensation, perception, mental formations, consciousness. Each layer, a thread the entity had spun to ensnare her, reflecting her fears of losing her mystic clarity, her guilt over past attachments, her identity as the Trinity's guide. She touched the medallion, resisting the urge to invoke its light, a reflex she'd leaned on too often. Mind alone, she thought, echoing her own teachings. She had to dismantle this, not dispel it, peeling back its illusions with the unknowing she'd honed since her youth. The first illusion emerged a figure stepping from the mist near the altar, clad in flowing robes of midnight blue, its face obscured by a veil, its presence a chill that seeped into her bones. "You faltered," it said, voice a soft echo of her own, laced with sorrow and reproach. "Your unknowing weakens because you doubt its depth." The skandha of sensation flared, a visceral pang in her chest where the medallion rested, a warmth turned cold, a tremor of uncertainty that echoed her first steps into the mystic void nights spent in silence, seeking the unborn beyond form, now twisted into fear of its loss. Memories surged her early days alone, a young seeker trembling before the great other tree, its branches a promise she'd feared she couldn't keep, the dark session. Her voice guiding Evan and Pamela, a strength she'd questioned even as she spoke. She breathed, centering herself with a silent prayer, not to banish, but to see. "You're my doubt," she said, voice steady despite the ache, "not my truth." The figure wavered, its veil fluttering, but it shifted, its voice splitting into a chorus. More figures materialized, dozens of shadowed mystics, their robes tattered, their faces blurred but familiar, eyes glowing violet as they encircled her, a tightening ring of judgment. "You betrayed us," they intoned. A psychic assault that struck her perception, the skandha of thought twisting her reality into a gallery of failure. "Your wisdom is a lie, the unknowing, a farce that led us astray, left us lost in the void." Agnes saw it in her mind's eye, her teachings unraveling, the light of the cloud of unknowing dimming, a vision of lost souls, echoing Vijnaptimatra's cosmic unmaking. "You're no guide," they taunted, their voices deepening into a chorus of scorn. "Just a fool who cloaks her ignorance in mystery. Too weak to save us from the shadow you named." Her role as their anchor, forged through years of silent surrender, became a chain, binding her to their condemnation. Each word a weight that pressed her spirit down. She clasped the medallion, the instinct to invoke its light rising, but she plunged into the unknowing instead, not to dispel, but to perceive. The chants grew louder, a storm of mental formations, pride in her mystic clarity swelling into hubris, guilt over past choices curdling into despair, the relentless need to lead a mantra that had defined her since the monastery's reunion. "You abandoned love for this," the mystics accused, their voices sharpening. "Sacrificed your heart for a void that consumes all your friends, your past, lost to your cold wisdom." Memories flooded her youth, a fleeting warmth beside a figure she'd buried deep. The plateau, guiding Pamela against Mara, a bond she'd feared tainting with her own shadows. Vijnaptimatra had seized these threads, spinning them into a prison of self-reproach. "You're not real," Agnes said, her voice cutting through the chant, calm but resolute, a blade of awareness against the storm. "You're my clinging, my need to be the guide, to prove my unknowing is enough." The mystics faltered, their forms blurring, their violet eyes dimming as she stripped away the skanda of consciousness. She saw herself not the sage she'd become, but the seeker from long ago, trembling before the void, grasping at wisdom as a shield against her own frailty, a guide who'd sought its silence rather than her own heart. This realm fed on that Agnes, the one who'd feared connection and magnified her role into a suffocating trap. The chamber shifted, its walls contracting with a soft, mournful sigh, the mist rising to swirl around her waist, its chill seeping into her skin, a sensation that prickled her nerves and tightened her throat. A new vision rose Aleister Crowley, emerging from the mist, clad in tattered ceremonial robes, his high forehead gleaming, his void eyes fixed on her with a gaze that pierced her soul. "You failed me, my love," he whispered, voice a velvet caress laced with venom, a sound that echoed their past, a love long buried, hinted at in Book One's shadows, now exhumed by Vijnaptimatra. The skanda of form anchored her to the image, her body, her identity as a mystic, the warmth of his touch, a yoke that bowed her shoulders, the ache of his loss, a wound reopened. "You chose the void over me," he taunted, stepping closer, his grin sardonic, "left me to darkness, your heart too cold to hold our light." Agnes's breath caught, memories surging nights by candlelight, his voice weaving spells, her hand in his, a love she'd forsaken for the unknowing, his spectral taunts in the wasteland, a ghost she'd banished, but never released. She wanted to clutch the medallion, to summon its light, but Evan's resolve echoed, "Mind alone." She lowered her hand, facing him with steady eyes. "There is no failure," she said, voice soft but firm, letting go of the form she clung to. "You're my regret, my need to hold what I lost. But the unknowing is beyond me, beyond this body, this past. Our love was real, but it's not my prison." Crowley's form flickered, his grin fading, the mist receding as the chamber trembled, cracks spidering through the walls, the chants softening. The final illusion coalesced a vision of Evan and Pamela, their forms rising from the mist, their faces pale and drawn, their bodies broken amidst the chamber's ruins. Evan's furba lace snapped, blood pooling beneath him. Pamela's womb was dark, her hands limp, the Bodachild's light extinguished. "You abandoned us," they whispered, voices entwined in a haunting duet, frail yet piercing, "left us to die for your wisdom, your precious void. We trusted you, Agnes, and you led us to ruin your Trinity a lie, your light a shadow." The skanda of sensation flared love for them, a warmth turned to ice, guilt a knife twisting in her chest, the ache of their imagined loss, a weight that crushed her spirit. "You're alone now," they taunted, their voices deepening, "because you always were too wise to need us, too distant to save us. We died following your path, and you turned away." Tears welled in Agnes's eyes, memories surging, the monastery's reunion, Evan's tears, Pamela's embrace, a bond she'd feared fracturing, the dark session, their hands in hers, a trust she doubted she deserved. She sank to her knees, the mist yielding beneath her, the medallion cool against her chest. But she breathed, the unknowing a shield of clarity. Inhale, silence rising. Exhale, shadows fading, and faced them, her voice breaking but resolute. "No," she said, tears streaking her face. "You're my strength, not my burden. Vijnaptimatra twists you, but I see you true alive, with me, in the unborn. I didn't abandon you. I carry you here." She pressed a hand to her heart. Always. The figures wavered, their broken forms softening, their whispers fading. And the chamber shuddered, its walls crumbling, the mist dissolving as light pierced the haze. The realm unraveled, the pearl's pulse flaring bright and steady, a lifeline pulling her back. Agnes knelt amidst the ruins, the dimension dissolving into a faint echo of the monastery's hall, Evan and Pamela still lost to their own realms. She dismantled it not with light, but with mind alone, stripping away the skandhas Vijnaptimatra had woven, the form of her past, the sensation of her guilt, the perception of her failure, the mental formations of her pride, the consciousness of her isolation. The medallion rested against her chest, its branches a quiet witness to her victory, a tool she'd set aside to face the truth. She rose, the air shimmering, the rift's pull faint but growing, and took a moment to reflect, the chamber's echoes fading into silence. Her duty wasn't to guide alone, it was to walk with Evan and Pamela, a shared light that transcended her fears. The unknowing, the Dharmakaya's truth, wasn't hers to prove, it was theirs to uphold, a bond strengthened by their unity. Vijnaptimatra had shown her shadows loss, detachment, regret, but in dismantling them, she'd found clarity not as a solitary mystic, but as part of a trinity forged in the unborn, her love for them a strength, not a weakness. Even Crowley's ghost, a memory she could release. Agnes straightened, the medallion at her heart, and faced the haze, the monastery's hall flickering into view. Evan and Pamela were still out there, their realms conquered or yet to be faced, but she felt their presence a thread of unity unbroken, a resilience she'd carry into the battles ahead. The pearl's pulse steadied her resolve, and she waited, her mind clear, her purpose renewed, ready to reunite and face the entity that had dared to twist their light. Chapter 9. The Trinity Rekindled. The monastery's hall flickered back into existence, its cavernous expanse a jarring return from the mind realm's oppressive shadows, the air thick with a damp chill that seeped into their bones. The scent of mold hung heavy, mingling with the faint, acrid tang of ash from their earlier battles, a stale breath trapped within the ancient stone. The cracked tiles beneath their feet gleamed faintly in the dim light filtering through jagged, vine-choked windows, their surfaces slick with moisture that reflected the quivering shadows on the walls. Writhing tendrils that pulsed like veins, their tips glistening with a dark, oily sheen. The silence was a fragile veneer, broken only by the soft drip of water from a shattered arch overhead, each drop a sharp echo that reverberated through the hall like a heartbeat struggling to persist. Evan emerged first, his form materializing near a toppled pew, the wood splintered and moss-eaten, its decay a stark contrast to the furba. In his hand, its meteoric iron streaked with ash, glinting faintly as he steadied himself. His tattered robes clung to his frame, the galactic patterns dulled by sweat and blood, their edges frayed from the Wasteland's trials, and his breath rasped, a visible plume in the cool air. His brown eyes, hardened by years of black dragon discipline, softened as he scanned the hall, the tension in his shoulders easing like a bowstring unstrung when he saw the others. Pamela appeared next, a few paces to his left, her knees buckling briefly as she landed, the soft thud muffled by the tile's dampness. She steadied herself. The furba Evan had gifted her gripped tight in her trembling hand, its blade notched from use, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, strands curling against her pale skin like ink on parchment. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her chest heaving as she shook off the realm's lingering weight, her fierce gaze darting to Evan with a flicker of relief. Agnes followed last, her bare feet silent against the stone as she materialized near the hall's center, the silver medallion of the great other tree resting against her chest, its branches catching the faint light in a shimmer that danced across the tiles. Her robes, once pristine, hung loose and stained, their edges frayed by the mist of her realm, but her posture remained unbroken, a quiet grace that belied the exhaustion etched into the fine lines of her face. The air around her seemed to still, the shadows retreating slightly as if wary of her presence, and her half-closed eyes traced the hall with a serenity that felt like a balm against its decay. The Money Pearl's pulse thrummed through the stone, a steady heartbeat that had guided them back, its rhythm syncing with their own, a lifeline woven through their shared trials, a testament to their survival. Evan's voice broke the silence, hoarse but warm, cutting through the hall's oppressive hush like a blade through fog. "You're back," he said, stepping closer, his boots scuffing the tiles. the furba lowering to his side as relief softened his features, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Pamela crossed to him, her furba clattering to the stone with a sharp ring that echoed off the walls, her hand clasping his arm with a grip fierce enough to leave marks, her fingers trembling against his torn sleeve. "We made it," she said, her tone raw with emotion, her breath catching as she turned to Agnes, her smile widening despite the weariness in her eyes. "All of us." Agnes opened her eyes fully, meeting their gazes with a calm that pierced the gloom, her voice a thread of quiet strength that wove them together. "The Unborn held us," she said softly, her words carrying the weight of their shared journey, the medallion's faint glow a beacon in the dimness. "We're stronger for it." They gathered near the hall's center, drawn to a ring of shattered tiles that formed a crude circle, a familiar spot where Agnes had led the dark session, its edges jagged and slick with condensation. Evan sank to the floor, his back resting against a cracked pillar, its surface cold and rough against his spine. The furba resting beside him, its blade scraping the stone with a faint screech as he set it down. His body ached, muscles protesting with every movement, but his spirit flared, alight with the clarity he'd found. Pamela settled cross-legged a few feet away, her furba within reach, its hilt glinting as she brushed damp hair from her face with trembling hands, her breath slowing into a rhythm that mirrored the pearl's pulse. Agnes knelt between them, folding her robes beneath her with a grace that defied the hall's decay, the medallion cradled in her lap, its branches casting faint shadows across the tiles like a mandala of their own. The pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a call urging them onward, but for now, they paused, the weight of their mind realm spilling into words, a tapestry of shared struggle weaving itself in the air. "It was the temple," Evan began, his voice low and rough, eyes tracing the shadows as if still seeing the sanctum's warped ruins, the ichor pooling at his feet. A twisted version, walls bleeding black, the pearl's pedestal smashed. They came at me past black dragons, hollow and accusing, the supreme towering over me, even you two, broken, telling me I'd failed, that I'd let the temple crumble, the Dharmakaya fade. He clenched a fist, knuckles whitening, then released it, a faint smile breaking through his exhaustion as he met their gazes. I wanted to fight, chanted away with the furba, like always, but it was my mind, my duty twisted into guilt, my pride into isolation. I had to let it go, see it for what it was, shadows, not truth. Pamela nodded, her gaze softening as she leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees, the tiles cold against her palms. "I saw failure too," she said, her voice steadying despite the tremor in her hands, her eyes distant as the womb's echoes lingered. Mine was a womb my Bodachild's home turned into a nightmare, all slime and screams. Shadows of children surrounded me, then you and Evan, broken, blaming me for losing it, for abandoning you to save it. Her voice cracked, a raw edge cutting through, but she steadied it, meeting Evan's eyes with a fierce resolve. I dropped the furba had to. It was my fear, my need to protect it, twisting me into thinking I'd failed you both. I saw through it, let it unravel. Agnes listened, her hand still on the medallion, its faint warmth a quiet pulse against her fingers, her expression a blend of warmth and gravity as their words painted a vivid picture of their trials. "And mine," she said, her tone soft but resonant, carrying the weight of decades, was the void I've sought all my life the unknowing turned against me. A chamber of mist, mystics accusing me of leading them astray. Then she paused, her fingers tightening briefly on the medallion, a flicker of something raw crossing her face regret, a shadow from her past surfacing. "Crowley, my past love, and you two, broken, saying I'd forsaken you for wisdom. It was my regret, my isolation, spun into a trap, my need to be the guide, untouchable." Evan's brow furrowed, the name-stirring memories of the Wasteland specter, a chill running down his spine, while Pamela leaned closer, curiosity sharpening her gaze, her breath catching on the damp air. "Crowley?" she asked, voice gentle but probing, her fingers brushing the tiles as if grounding herself. Agnes's eyes darkened, a shadow of memory surfacing like mist over a still lake, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of years. "Long ago," she said, her tone soft but heavy. He was more than a name whispered in dread. We were lovers young, reckless, bound by a fire that burned too bright, a passion that wove spells and dreams in equal measure. I chose the unknowing over him, left him to his shadows when I saw the abyss he courted. Vijnaptimatra dug that up, turned it against me, his voice, his touch. A wound I'd thought healed. She exhaled, the medallion's glow steadying her, its branches a quiet testament to her resilience. But I saw through it, through all of it, with mind alone, not light. Evan nodded, a quiet respect deepening in his gaze, the echo of Crowley's Wasteland taunts fading into understanding. While Pamela reached out, her hand brushing Agnes's with a feather-light touch, a silent acknowledgement of the cost, her fingers warm against the cool silver. Their voices faded, the hall's silence settling over them like a heavy cloak, the drip of water from the arches, a metronome to their shared breath. But Agnes raised a hand, her serenity sharpening into a purpose that cut through the stillness, her voice drawing them in like a beacon. We need to understand why, she said, her tone shifting to a steady cadence, weaving insight into the damp air with a precision honed by years as a bodhisattva. Why Vijnaptimatra chose this form of combat, these mind realms, to break us before the final battle. It's not chance, it's strategy, a calculated strike at our core. Evan straightened, his back pressing harder against the pillar, its cold biting through his robes as his warrior's instinct flared, his eyes narrowing with focus. Pamela's hands stilled on her knees, her protector's resolve stirring, her gaze locking onto Agnes with a hunger for clarity, the tiles chill, grounding her anticipation. Agnes continued, her voice a river of wisdom flowing through the hall, each word deliberate, resonating off the stone like a chant of its own. It's a parasite of perception, as I showed you in the dark session, feeding on the skandhas, twisting our strengths into weaknesses with a cunning born of its ancient origin. It didn't strike with brute force because it knows our power, our unity, our spirits, forged through trials like Mara's assault, like these realms we've just faced. It sought to shatter that first, to erode our minds and break our wills before we could confront it with the Pearl's light. It's not just a thief, it's a strategist, a shadow that thrives on doubt, fear, and division, our greatest assets turned against us. She paused, her gaze drifting to the medallion, its branches casting faint, shifting shadows across her hands, then lifted her eyes to meet theirs, her words deepening with insight. Evan, your duty, your strength as a black dragon, your unwavering resolve to guard the Dharmakaya's truth was twisted into guilt and isolation, a chain to bind you to failure, to make you doubt your worth. Pamela, your love, your bond with the Bodhichild, your fierce heart that births light was warped into fear and loss, a trap to sever you from us, to make you question your role as its protector. And mine. She touched the medallion, her fingers tracing its thorns. My unknowing, my clarity, my calm that guides us was turned into regret and detachment, a prison to isolate me from you, to make me fear my wisdom's cost. Her voice grew quieter, a thread of urgency weaving through its calm, her eyes piercing theirs with a gravity that stilled the hall's echoes. It chose this because it fears us whole, our trinity, our shared resolve, the light we carry together. It knows that united, our minds are unassailable, our spirits a flame it cannot extinguish. By breaking us apart, scattering us into these realms, it hoped to weaken the bond that threatens its design, to make us doubt the Pearl's truth, the Dharmakaya's power, before we could reclaim it and turn its own inversion against it. It's not just fighting for the Pearl, it's fighting to survive us. Evan's jaw tightened, the pieces falling into place like stones settling into a foundation, his breath a visible plume as he exhaled, the warrior's fire rekindling in his chest. It's scared, he said, voice rough but certain, his hand brushing the furba's hilt as if testing its weight anew. It knows we can stop it together. Pamela's eyes blazed, her hands clenching into fists on her knees, her defiance flaring like a spark in the gloom. Damn right, she said, her tone fierce, cutting through the damp air. It's terrified. We've faced worse, Mara, these realms, and come out stronger. It's got nothing on us. Her voice trembled with conviction, her protector's heart a shield against the entity's shadow, the tiles cold a fuel to her fire. Agnes nodded, a faint smile touching her lips, but her expression grew solemn, a shadow crossing her serene features like a cloud over a still lake. She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the medallion's branches, then met their eyes, her gaze steady but heavy with portent, her voice softening into a whisper that carried the weight of centuries. "Yes," she said, "but there's more a thread I felt in the realm, a whisper beyond the illusions, an echo I can't unhear." She paused, the hall's silence thickening, the drip of water slowing as if holding its breath, then continued, her words deliberate, each one a stone dropped into their shared calm. "I have an ill omen, something deep, something certain. This battle, this final stand against Vainiaptimatra, it will be my last. I've fought many wars as a spiritual warrior, a bodhisattva across years you can't fathom, battles with shadows and doubts that span lifetimes. But this, I sense, is where my combat ends." Evan's breath caught, his eyes widening as he leaned forward, the pillars cold forgotten, his voice sharp, with disbelief slicing through the hall's hush. "Nonsense," he said, the word a bark, his hands gripping the tiles, knuckles whitening as he shook his head. "We won't have it, Agnes, not after all this, not after you pulled us through those realms. You're not falling, not now, not ever." His tone trembled, a warrior's defiance warring with a friend's fear, his chest heaving as he met her gaze. The Furba beside him a silent vow of protection. Pamela's face paled, her breath hitching as she dropped her Furba to the tiles with a clatter that echoed off the walls, her hands reaching for Agnes's, grasping them with a fierceness that belied her trembling fingers. "No!" she said, her voice fierce and breaking, tears prickling her eyes as she leaned closer, her dark hair falling across her face like a veil. "We'll guard you, Agnes, no matter what it takes. Our safety be damned. You're not done, not here, not with us. I won't let it happen." Her grip tightened, her protector's heart a bulwark against the omen, her tears spilling onto the stone, glinting in the faint light. Agnes smiled, a faint, bittersweet curve of her lips that softened the lines of her face, and squeezed their hands, her touch warm and steady, carrying decades of resilience, a bodhisattva's calm unshaken by their protests. "Don't worry for me," she said, her voice gentle but firm, a quiet strength that cut through their desperation, her fingers lingering on theirs as if memorizing their warmth. "I've had many such encounters, battles with shadows that stretched across kalpas, with doubts that tested my spirit, with loves lost and found that shaped me into this form. This is not my end in essence, but in this fight, this body, I feel it coming a clarity, not a fear. The unborn endures beyond me, as it will through you." She looked at them, her gaze softening with a gratitude that broke through her stoicism, a flicker of light in her eyes. "You're my legacy, my strength Evan's fire, Pamela's heart. I've lived long, fought hard, and this is but one thread in a tapestry vast beyond measure." Evan pulled his hand free, gripping the pillar's edge, the stone rough against his palm as he shook his head, his voice rough with refusal, a warrior's resolve drowning out the tremor of loss. "No, Agnes," he said, his tone rising, echoing off the arches. "You've got years left, adventures, battles, more wisdom to share. We'll see to it you're not done, not with us. I'll stand between you and that thing, pearl or no pearl." His eyes blazed, his chest heaving, the Furba beside him a silent oath, his refusal a shield against the omen's weight. Pamela nodded fiercely, wiping her tears with a sleeve, her voice trembling but unyielding as she leaned closer, her hand still clutching Agnes's, the tiles chill fueling her defiance. "He's right," she said, her tone a fire that burned through the damp air. "You've nurtured us, brought us this far spiritual success, more light to come. You've got branches left to sprout on that mandala of yours, Agnes years, adventures, with us. We won't let you go, not now, not ever." Her tears fell anew, glinting on the stone, her protector's vow a bulwark against fate, her love a flame that refused to flicker out. Agnes's smile widened, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her calm, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she looked at them, their defiance a warmth that wrapped around her heart. "You're my strength," she whispered, her voice a melody against the hall's silence, "and that's why I can face this. The Unborn binds us past, present, beyond." But before she could say more, a distant rumble shattered the stillness, a low rolling thunder that vibrated through the stone, its deep resonance shaking the tiles beneath them, the shadows quivering as if roused. The sound swelled, a primal crack that split the air, and one of the cracked mirrors lining the walls, a relic of the monastery's forgotten past, shattered, its fragments raining to the floor in a cascade of glass, each piece glinting with the faint, eerie light of the pearl's pulse, scattering across the tiles like broken stars. The three froze, their gazes locking, the omen's weight sinking into their bones, the thunder's echo a harbinger that pulsed through the hall like a warning drum. Evan rose, the furba in hand, his resolve hardened by the sound, his breath a visible plume as he faced the shadows, his warrior's fire blazing. Pamela stood beside him, her furba gripped tight, her tears drying as her defiance flared, a protector's stance against the dark, the tiles cold a fuel to her resolve. Agnes remained kneeling a moment longer, the medallion glowing faintly in her lap, then rose, her serenity a quiet pillar, her eyes tracing the shattered mirror with a calm that belied the storm ahead. The pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a call to arms that synced with their heartbeats, and they faced the hall's depths as one, their trinity unbroken, the thunder's echo a challenge they'd meet together, whatever the cost, whatever the outcome. Chapter 10. The Shadows Stir. The monastery's hall trembled in the wake of the thunder's echo, its cavernous expanse alive with a tension that crackled through the damp air like static before a storm. The shattered mirror's fragments glinted on the cracked tiles, their jagged edges catching the faint, eerie light of the Mani Pearl's pulse, a scattering of broken stars that mirrored the Trinity's fractured calm. The air hung heavy with a scent of mold and decay, a cloying dampness that clung to their skin, mingling with the metallic tang of the shadow's ichor, a bitter aftertaste that coated their throats. The walls loomed, their pitted granite surfaces draped with writhing vines, tendrils that pulsed like living veins, their tips glistening with dark, oily sheen, quivering as if roused by the thunder's crack, their movements casting faint, flickering shadows that danced across the stone like restless spirits. Evan stood near the hall center, the furba gripped in his hand, its meteoric iron streaking the dimness with a cold, unyielding gleam, his tattered robes swaying as he faced the shadows, the galactic patterns dulled by sweat and blood, their edges frayed into threads that brushed the tiles. His breath was a steady plume in the chill, his brown eyes hardened by years of black dragon discipline scanning the hall with a warrior's focus. Though a flicker of unease lingered beneath, the memory of Agnes's omen gnawing at his resolve. Pamela flanked his right, her own furba clenched tight, its notched blade a testament to battles past, glinting faintly as she shifted her weight, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, strands curling against her pale skin like ink on wet parchment. Her breath came in short, fierce bursts, her grip whitening her knuckles, her eyes blazing with a protector's defiance that burned against the dread coiling in her chest. Agnes stood between them, her bare feet silent on the stone, the silver medallion of the great other tree glowing faintly against her chest, its branches catching the dim light in a shimmer that danced across the tiles like a quiet prayer. Her robes, once pristine, hung loose and stained, but her serene gaze fixed on the hall's depths, where the keening had sharpened into a growl, her calm a quiet pillar that anchored them amidst the rising storm. The Mani Pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a heartbeat that synced with their own, its rhythm a call to arms that pulsed through the stone, urging them forward after the thunder's ominous warning. The shadows on the walls quivered with renewed vigor, the vines snapping like taut ropes, their ichor splattering the tiles in dark, glistening pools that reflected the faint light in sickly hues. Evan's jaw tightened, his warrior's instinct flaring as he turned to the others, his voice rough but resolute, cutting through the hall's oppressive hush like a blade through fog. "We can't wait," he said, stepping forward, his boots scuffing the damp tiles, the sound a sharp scrape against the silence. "It's coming whatever that thunder means. It's Vinyapti Matra stirring. We need to find the pearl now." before it twists it further, before it unravels everything we've fought for. His gaze flicked to the shadowed archway at the hall's far end, where the growl deepened into a rumble that vibrated through the stone, a primal force that set his nerves alight. Pamela nodded, her furba rising slightly as she matched his stride, her tone fierce as her breath steadied, a visible plume curling in the dim light. "Agreed," she said, her voice cutting through the damp air, steady despite the tremor in her hands, her eyes darting to the archway's darkness. "It's scared of us tried to break us in those realms, and we walked out stronger. It's got it on the run now, let's finish it, take the pearl back, and end this." Her gaze lingered on Agnes, a flicker of fear beneath her defiance, a silent plea woven into her words, "We won't lose you." Her protector's vow hardening against the omen's weight, her fingers tightening on the furba's hilt as if it could anchor her resolve. Agnes moved with them, her robes rustling softly against the tiles, a whisper of fabric in the stillness, the medallion's glow casting faint, shifting shadows across the stone as she spoke. Her voice a steady cadence that wove through the tension like a thread of light. "It's not on the run," she said, her tone calm but edged with a quiet urgency, her bare feet leaving faint damp prints on the tiles as she stepped forward. "It's gathering, drawing strength from the pearl's light, twisting it as we speak, inverting its essence into the abomination we saw in the dark session." Those mind realms were its first strike, a gambit to weaken our spirits, to fracture our minds before we could face it whole. But we've proven our resilience, our strength lies in our unity, and it knows that now. She paused, her fingers tightening on the medallion, its branches pulsing faintly, then continued, her words deliberate, each one a stone laid in their path. "It chose those realms to exploit our skandhas. Evan's duty, Pamela's love, my clarity because it feared what we are together. A trinity forged in the unborn, unyielding, a light it cannot extinguish alone. Now it will test that unity with everything it has left, guarding the pearl beyond that arch." Evan's eyes narrowed, his grip on the furba tightening as he nodded, the warrior's fire rekindling in his chest, his breath steadying into the rhythm of spirit. Breathing inhale, chi rising from his dantian, exhale, energies flowing through his weary frame. "Then we take it back," he said, his voice a low growl that echoed off the arches, his boots planting firmly on the tiles, the dampness seeping through to his soles. "Together no more realms, no more tricks, just us and it. We've seen its worst guilt, fear, regret, and we're still standing. It's got nothing left to throw at us that we can't break." His gaze met Agnes's, a flicker of defiance against her omen, a silent vow you're not falling woven into his resolve, his free hand clenching into a fist as he turned to the archway. Pamela's lips curved into a fierce grin, her furba glinting as she adjusted her stance beside him, her breath a plume in the humid air, her spirit breathing syncing with his inhale, warmth rising. Exhale, strength steadying her trembling hands. "Let it try," she said, her tone sharp and unyielding, slicing through the dampness like a blade, her eyes blazing with a protector's fire. "We've faced its mind games, mine with the Bodichild, yours with the temple, and came out whole. It's got nothing on us now, not after we've seen its design. Thanks to you." She nodded to Agnes, her gaze softening briefly with gratitude, then hardening again. "We'll rip that pearl out of its grip, and I'll be damned if it takes anything else from us." Her words carried a fierce edge, her love for Agnes a shield against the omen's shadow, her boots scuffing the tiles as she stepped closer, her shoulder brushing Evan's in a silent pact. Agnes's expression softened, a faint smile touching her lips as she regarded them, the medallion's glow flaring slightly, its light casting a halo around her that danced across the stone. "Yes," she said, her voice a quiet thunder, resonant with the wisdom of a bodhisattva. "But we must be precise, strategic, not reckless. Vijnaptimatra is a parasite, as I showed you, feeding on perception, twisting the pearl's light into its own power. It's weakened by our resilience, but it's not defeated, it's desperate, and desperation makes it dangerous. We move as one Evan's resolve to anchor us, Pamela's heart to fuel us, my unknowing to pierce its illusions." She stepped forward, her bare feet silent against the damp tiles, her gaze shifting to the archway where the rumble swelled, the air thickening with malice. The pearl's pulse is our guide. It's close, beyond that threshold, but the entity will guard it with its full might, a last stand to break us before we can turn its inversion back. Evan exhaled, his breath a steady rhythm as he nodded, the fourth Diana's clarity sharpening his focus, the lessons of his mind realm duty stripped bare guiding his next words. "Then we hit it together," he said, his voice firm, his boots planting a wider stance, the dampness seeping through as he faced the archway. "I'll take point, draw its focus, let it waste its strength on me. Pamela, you flank it, keep it off balance, hit where it's weak. Agnes, you guide us, your unknowing's our edge, cutting through its lies." He glanced at them, his eyes blazing with a warrior's fire tempered by trust, his free hand unclenching as he adjusted his grip on the furba, its weight a tool, not a crutch. Pamela's grin widened, a fierce spark lighting her eyes as she stepped to his right, her furba poised, her breath syncing with the pearl's pulse, her realm's truth love over fear, fueling her resolve. "Got it," she said, her voice a sharp edge, her boots scuffing the tiles as she shifted her weight, the dampness grounding her stance. "I'll circle it, keep it guessing, strike when it lunges. It won't know what hit it with us both pressing in." Her gaze flicked to Agnes, a protector's vow shimmering beneath her words. "I'll shield you," her fingers tightening on the furba's hilt, her love a fire that burned against the dark. Agnes nodded, her medallion glowing brighter, its branches casting faint, intricate shadows across the tiles as she stepped between them, her voice a calm that wove their plan into a tapestry of unity. "And I'll pierce its veil," she said, her tone steady, resonant with the unknowing's quiet power, her bare feet leaving faint prints on the stone as she faced the archway. "It thrives on illusion, my clarity will strip that away, expose its core. When you see the pearl, focus there. Our strength together will break its hold." Her eyes met theirs, a flicker of gratitude softening her serenity, a bodhisattva's trust in their trinity, her hands resting lightly on the medallion as if drawing strength from its branches. They advanced as a unit, their steps syncing with the pearl's pulse, a rhythm that echoed through the stone, the hall's shadows retreating slightly as if wary of their approach, the vines snapping taut with a sound like breaking sinew. The archway loomed ahead, its granite frame pitted and scarred, the darkness beyond a gaping maw that pulsed with a sickly green light, the growl swelling into a roar that shook the tiles beneath their feet, dust raining from the arches overhead. The air thickened, a palpable malice pressing against their senses like a physical weight, the scent of decay intensifying into a rancid sweetness that stung their nostrils, the vine's ichor splattering the stone in dark, glistening pools that reflected their silhouettes in distorted mockery. Evan took point, his furba raised but unvoiced, his mind sharp with the fourth Diana's clarity, his boots splashing through the dampness as he crossed the threshold. Pamela flanked his right, her furba poised, her spirit breathing a steady rhythm, her realm's lessons a shield as she followed, her shoulder brushing his in silent solidarity. Agnes trailed a step behind, her medallion blazing, her unknowing a quiet shield, her realm's truth a light as she stepped into the dark. The hall gave way to a vast chamber, a cavernous abyss that defied the monastery's confines, its walls lost in an endless shroud of shadow, its floor a sea of writhing ichor that lapped at their boots, its surface rippling with faint, distorted reflections of their faces. Evan's stern, Pamela's fierce, Agnes's serene twisted into grotesque parodies. The ceiling arched into a dome of churning mist, pierced by jagged spires that dripped with dark tendrils, their tips glistening with venomous dew that hissed as it struck the ichor, sending up plumes of acrid vapor. The air hummed with a dissonant chant, a cacophony of whispers that clawed at their minds, echoing their mind realm's taunts, failure, loss, isolation, a psychic assault they'd learned to pierce. At the chamber's center loomed Vijnaptimatra, a towering mass of shadow and eyes, its form a chaos of tendrils and orbs, crimson, yellow, violet, blinking in a cacophony of awareness. Its bulk pulsing with the pearl's stolen light, a sickly green core that throbbed at its heart, the Mani pearl embedded within, its radiance twisted into a grotesque parody of the Dharmakaya's truth, a pulsating wound in the fabric of reality. The entity's presence struck them like a psychic wave, a roar that reverberated through their skulls, a voiceless hiss that formed words in their minds. You've come to fail, your light is mine. Your unity a delusion, your trinity a fragile lie. Evan staggered, his furba trembling as the realm's echoes gilt. Isolation flickered at his edges, a whisper of the supreme scorn brushing his mind. But he steadied himself, planting his boots in the ichor, its cold seeping through to his soles as he growled. We've seen your tricks, and we're still here. Pamela stumbled, her furba steady as her realm's shadows fear. Loss brushed her thoughts, the Bodachild's broken form flickering, but she shook it off, her voice fierce as she stepped forward, the ichor splashing against her legs. You're the delusion, she snapped, her breath a plume in the humid air, and we're taking it back everything you've stolen. Agnes stood firm, the medallion's glow flaring brighter, her unknowing piercing the entity's taunts. Crowley's velvet sneer, a whisper she silenced, her voice calm but unyielding as she advanced, the ichor lapping at her ankles. Your design ends here with us, whole and unbroken. Vijnaptimatra swelled, its tendrils lashing the air with a sound like cracking whips, its eyes pulsing in unison as the ichor surged, rising to their knees, its cold biting into their bones, its surface rippling with their distorted reflections. Shadows erupted from its bulk humanoid forms with insect-like claws, bulbous horrors with whip-thin tendrils, crab-like specters with spiked carapaces, a horde echoing their mind realms. But weaker, a desperate echo of its earlier gambit, their forms fraying at the edges. Evan raised his furba. Pamela mirrored him, but Agnes stepped forward, her medallion blazing, her voice rising in a prayer from the cloud of unknowing. Beyond form, beyond knowing, she intoned, her unknowing a shield that unraveled the shadow's edges, their claws dissolving into mist, their eyes winking out like extinguished stars, the ichor's ripples slowing as her calm pierced the chaos. The entity roared, its tendrils striking with savage precision, one coiling around Evan's arm, its grip cold and slick, barbs digging into his flesh, drawing a sharp hiss as blood streaked his sleeve. Another lashing Pamela's legs, its thorns grazing her skin, a sting that burned as she gritted her teeth, the ichor splashing higher, soaking her robes. A third tendril whipped toward Agnes, its tip barbed and dripping, but she raised a hand, her medallion's light flaring into a radiant arc, the tendril recoiling as if burned, its surface sizzling with a hiss that echoed off the spires. Evan twisted free, his furba slashing, once not chanting, but breaking its hold, the blade slicing through the tendril in a spray of ichor that splattered his face, its cold stinging his eyes as he steadied his stance, the fourth Diana anchoring him. Pamela kicked loose, her furba piercing a tendril's base, severing it with a wet crunch, the ichor splashing her legs as she rolled aside, her spirit breathing a rhythm of defiance, her breath a fierce plume against the mist. The entity recoiled, its eyes narrowing, the pearl's green glow pulsing faster, a sign of its strain, its horde faltering under Agnes's prayer, their forms dissolving into vapor that swirled around the chamber. The Trinity pressed forward, their steps synced with the pearl's pulse, the ichor rising to their thighs, its cold numbing their legs, but their resolve burned brighter. Vijnaptimatra lashed out again, tendrils striking in a flurry, one slamming Evan against a spire, the stone cracking against his back, a grunt escaping him as he pushed off, his furba slashing to parry another coiling around Pamela's waist, lifting her briefly before she twisted free, her furba piercing its root, her cry sharp as she landed, the ichor splashing her face, a third whipping toward Agnes, its barbs whistling, but her medallion flared, her prayer deepening beyond self, beyond fear, the tendril dissolving mid-strike, its remnants raining into the ichor with a hiss. The entity shuddered, its eyes flickering, the pearl's glow wavering, and the Trinity closed in, their unity a wall against its desperation, the first clash, a testament to their strength, a prelude to the battle's crescendo. The horde thinned, the ichor's surge slowing, and Vijnaptimatra retreated slightly, its tendrils curling inward, its eyes pulsing with a frantic rhythm as the pearl's light flickered, a sign of its weakening grip. Evan lowered his furba, wiping ichor from his face with a sleeve, his breath ragged but steady, his back aching from the spire's impact as he glanced at the others, his voice rough with exertion. "It's faltering," he said, the ichor lapping at his thighs. Its cold, a dull ache he ignored. "We've got it. We keep pushing. Together." Pamela nodded, her furba dripping with ichor, her legs trembling, but her stance firm. Her breath a fierce rhythm as she wiped sweat and ichor from her brow, her eyes blazing with triumph. "It's scared now," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the humid air. "We're breaking it, your prayer, Agnes. It's working." Her gaze flicked to Agnes, a flicker of awe beneath her defiance, her protector's heart steadying against the omen's shadow. Agnes stood firm, the medallion's glow steady in her hands, her prayer fading into silence as she met their eyes, her calm unshaken by the battle's toll, though a faint weariness lingered in her posture, a shadow of her omen's weight. "Yes," she said, her voice soft but resonant, carrying the Unknowing's quiet power. "But it's not broken, yet only wounded. It's drawing on the pearl, clinging to its inversion. We've tested its strength, proven ours, but the next strike will be its last stand." She paused, her gaze drifting to the pearl's green glow, then back to them, a flicker of something sorrow, resolve crossing her face, her words a quiet anchor. "We rest now. Gather ourselves, it's not done, and neither are we." They retreated a few steps, the ichor receding to their ankles, its cold lingering in their bones as they found a dry patch of stone near the archway, the chamber's shadows settling into an uneasy stillness. Evan sank against the wall, his furba resting beside him, its blade dripping ichor onto the tiles, his breath slowing as he wiped blood from his arm, the sting a dull reminder of the clash. His mind tracing Agnes's words, "My last combat," a thought he pushed aside, his warrior's resolve hardening. Pamela settled beside him, cross-legged, her furba across her lap, her hands trembling as she brushed ichor from her legs, her breath a steady rhythm as she glanced at Agnes. Her protector's vow, a silent fire. Not yet. Not ever. Agnes knelt between them, the medallion cradled in her hands, its glow dimming slightly, her bare feet leaving faint prints in the ichor as she closed her eyes briefly, a reflective pause settling over her, the omen's echo, a weight she bore alone. Evan broke the silence, his voice low, rough with fatigue but firm with purpose, his hand brushing the furba's hilt as he spoke. "We held it together," he said, his gaze meeting theirs, the chamber's mist swirling faintly around them. "You're unknowing, Agnes. It's our edge, like you said. It scared of us whole. I felt it falter when we stood as one." Pamela nodded, her eyes glinting with a fierce pride, her breath a plume as she leaned forward, the ichor's dampness clinging to her robes. "Damn right," she said, her tone sharp with conviction. "It's weakening those shadows barely held up. We've got it now, and we'll finish it together. No matter what." Her gaze lingered on Agnes, a flicker of fear beneath her triumph, her love a shield against the omen's shadow, her hand tightening on the furba as if to anchor her words. Agnes opened her eyes, meeting their gazes with a serenity that belied the battle's toll, the medallion's glow steadying as she spoke, her voice a quiet melody that wove through the damp air, carrying the weight of her vision. "Yes," she said, her tone soft but resolute, "we've wounded it, proven our unity is its fear. But it's desperate now, clinging to the pearl's light, and desperation breeds fury. The next clash will be its full might, a storm we must weather as one." She paused, her fingers tracing the medallion's branches, a faint tremor in her hands as she continued, her words heavy with unspoken portent. "I felt it in the realms. In the dark session, this battle is a pivot, a thread's end. We'll face it, and we'll win." But her voice trailed off, the omen's echo lingering, a shadow she didn't name, her gaze softening with gratitude as she looked at them, their defiance a warmth she held close. Evan shook his head, his hand gripping the furba's hilt, his voice rough with refusal as he leaned forward, the stone cold against his back. "No buts," he said, his tone cutting through the stillness. "We're not losing you, not to it, not to anything. We'll guard you. Agnes, your light's not fading. Not while we're here." His eyes blazed, a warrior's fire tempered by love, his breath a steady rhythm against the dampness. his refusal a vow etched in his stance. Pamela's tears welled anew, her hand reaching for Agnes's, grasping it with a fierceness that belied her trembling fingers, her voice breaking but unyielding as she spoke, the Iker's chill fueling her defiance. "He's right," she said, her tone a fire that burned through the mist. "You're not done, not with us, not with the adventures ahead. We'll see you through, branches and all spiritual success, Agnes, years to come." Her tears spilled, glinting on the stone, her protector's heart a bulwark against fate, her love a flame that refused to flicker out. Agnes smiled, a faint, bittersweet curve of her lips that softened the lines of her face, her hands squeezing theirs, warm and steady despite the tremor, a bodhisattva's calm anchoring their storm. "You're my strength," she whispered, her voice a melody against the chamber's silence. "And that's why we'll face it together. Always." The pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a call that synced with their heartbeats, and they rose as one, the Iker's dampness clinging to their robes, the shadows stirring anew, the Trinity's resolve alight against the dark, ready for the storm that loomed ahead. Chapter 11. The Heart of the Storm. The monastery's shadowed chamber pulsed with a malevolent energy, its vast expanse a cauldron of darkness that churned in the aftermath of the Trinity's first clash with Vijnaptimatra. The air was thick and humid, heavy, with the stench of decay and the sharp metallic tang of ichor, a cloying miasma that stung their nostrils and coated their tongues. The ichor-soaked floor lapped at their ankles, its surface rippling with faint, distorted reflections of their faces. Evan's stern resolve, Pamela's fierce defiance, Agnes's serene calm twisted into grotesque parodies that shimmered in the sickly green light emanating from the chamber's heart. The walls, lost in an endless shroud of shadow, pulsed with writhing tendrils, their tips dripping with venomous dew that hissed as it struck the ichor, sending up plumes of acrid vapor that swirled around the jagged spires, piercing the mist-laden ceiling. The Mani Pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a desperate heartbeat that echoed through the stone, its rhythm a call that synced with their own, urging them deeper into the storm. Evan stood near the chamber's edge, his boots planted in the ichor, its cold seeping through to his soles. The furba gripped in his hand, its meteoric iron streaked with the entity's dark blood, glinting faintly in the dimness. His tattered robes clung to his frame, the galactic patterns dulled by sweat and ichor, their frayed edges brushing the rippling surface as he steadied his breath. The fourth Diana's clarity anchoring him against the battle's toll. Blood streaked his arm from the tendril's barbs, a dull sting he ignored, his brown eyes blazing with a warrior's fire tempered by the mind realm's lessons duty stripped bare. Unity over isolation. Pamela flanked his right, her furba poised, its notched blade dripping with ichor, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, strands curling against her pale skin like ink on wet parchment. Her breath came in fierce, steady bursts, spirit breathing syncing with the pearl's pulse. Inhale, warmth rising. Exhale, strength flowing, her eyes glinting with a protector's resolve, her realm's truth love over fear fueling her stance, though the omen's shadow gnawed at her heart. Agnes stood between them, her bare feet silent in the ichor, the silver medallion of the great other tree glowing against her chest, its branches casting faint, intricate shadows across the rippling surface, her robes stained but her posture unbroken, her unknowing a quiet shield against the chaos, her calm a beacon amidst the storm. Vijnaptimatra loomed at the chamber's center, a towering mass of shadow and eyes crimson, yellow, violet blinking in a chaotic symphony, its tendrils curling inward like a wounded beast, its bulk pulsing with the pearl's stolen light, a sickly green core that throbbed at its heart, the Mani Pearl embedded within, its radiance twisted into a grotesque parody of the Dharmakaya's truth. The entity's form shuddered, its eyes flickering with a frantic rhythm, the first clash's wounds evident in its fraying edges, but its presence swelled anew, a psychic roar reverberating through their skulls. Your light fades, your unity crumbles, your hope is mine to devour. The words clawed at their minds, echoes of their mind realm's failure, loss, regret, brushing their edges. But the Trinity held firm, their bond a wall against the assault. Evan stepped forward, the ichor splashing against his legs, his furba raised but unvoiced, his voice a low growl that cut through the chamber's hum. "You're weakening," he said, his breath a plume in the humid air, his boots sinking deeper into the rippling surface as he advanced, his eyes locked on the pearl's green glow. "We've broken your illusions, your realms, your shadows. You're running out of tricks." Pamela matched his stride, her furba glinting as she flanked his right, the ichor soaking her robes to the thighs, its cold numbing her legs, but her tone was fierce, slicing through the mist. "You're scared," she snapped, her breath steady despite the ache in her grazed skin, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Scared of us, scared of what we can do together. We're taking it back, and you can't stop us." Her gaze flicked to Agnes, a flicker of warmth beneath her resolve, a protector's vow not yet woven into her words. Agnes followed, her medallion glowing brighter, its light piercing the mist as she stepped through the ichor, her bare feet leaving faint ripples in its surface, her voice a quiet thunder that wove through the chaos. "Your desperation betrays you," she said, her tone calm but edged with the Unknowing's clarity, her realm's lessons connection over isolation guiding her words. "You've wounded the pearl, but not broken it. Our unity holds its light, and that's what you fear most." Her eyes traced the entity's core, the pearl's glow, a beacon within its twisted mass, and she raised a hand, the medallion's light flaring, her prayer from the cloud of Unknowing beginning anew, beyond form, beyond knowing, a shield that pulsed through the chamber, the air shimmering as her calm pierced its malice. Vinyapti Matra roared, its tendrils lashing out with a fury born of desperation, the ichor surging to their waists, its cold biting into their bones, its surface churning with their distorted reflections. Evan's face twisted into despair, Pamela's into anguish, Agnes's into regret, a psychic assault that mirrored their realms. The entity struck, its tendrils whipping through the air with a sound like cracking sinew, one coiling around Evan's torso, its barbs digging into his ribs, drawing a sharp grunt as blood seeped through his robes, its grip crushing his breath. Another lashing Pamela's arm, its thorns piercing her flesh, a cry escaping her as she staggered, the ichor splashing her face, its sting blurring her vision. A third surging toward Agnes, its tip barbed and dripping, but her medallion flared, its light a radiant arc that burned the tendril mid-strike, its remnants dissolving into the ichor with a hiss that echoed off the spires. Evan twisted, his furba slashing through the tendril's base, not chanting, but breaking its hold, the blade slicing through in a spray of ichor that splattered his chest, its cold stinging his skin as he stumbled back, his breath ragged but steady, the fourth dhyana anchoring him against the pain. Pamela yanked her arm free, her furba piercing the tendril's root, severing it with a wet crunch, the ichor soaking her sleeve as she rolled aside, her spirit breathing a fierce rhythm, her cry sharp as she steadied her stance, her vision clearing with a blink. Agnes advanced, her medallion blazing, her prayer deepening, beyond self, beyond fear, the light pulsing outward, burning away a swarm of shadows that erupted from the entity's bulk humanoid forms, bulbous horrors, crab-like specters each dissolving into mist under her Unknowing, their claws and eyes fading into the vapor that swirled around the chamber. The entity recoiled, its eyes narrowing, its tendrils curling inward as the pearl's green glow flickered, a sign of its strain, but it swelled anew, its form pulsing with a desperate fury. The ichor surging to their chests, its cold numbing their limbs, its surface rippling with their reflections, now screaming in silent agony. A barrage of tendrils struck three coiling around Evan, one pinning his arms, another his legs, a third wrapping his throat, its barbs drawing blood as he choked, his furba slipping from his grasp to splash into the ichor. Two lashing Pamela, one binding her waist, lifting her off the ground, another striking her chest, knocking the breath from her lungs, her furba clattering to the surface as she gasped, a third surging toward Agnes, its barbs whistling, but her medallion flared brighter, her prayer rising. Beyond all, beyond void, the tendril burning away, its ash raining into the ichor, her light a shield that pulsed through the chamber. Evan struggled, his breath a ragged wheeze as he clawed at the tendril around his throat, blood streaking his neck. But he steadied his mind, the fourth Diana piercing the panic, his voice a strained whisper, together, his hands finding the Iker's surface, retrieving his furba with a splash, slashing upward to sever the tendrils, their remnants falling away as he staggered free, his chest heaving. Pamela twisted, her legs kicking against the tendril's grip, her breath a sharp gasp as she reached for her furba, her fingers brushing its hilt in the Iker, seizing it to pierce the tendril at her waist, its hold breaking as she dropped, landing with a splash, her spirit breathing a fierce anchor as she rose, her voice a cry, "We've got this." Agnes held her ground, her medallion's light a radiant dome, her prayer a steady chant that burned away the shadows surging anew, her calm unshaken, though her breath trembled faintly, the omen's weight a shadow in her eyes. Vinyaptimatra shuddered, its eyes flickering wildly, the pearl's glow wavering as the Trinity closed in, their steps synced with its pulse, the Iker receding to their waists, its cold lingering in their bones. The entity lashed out in a final, desperate, flurried tendril striking in a chaotic dance, one slamming Evan against a spire, the stone cracking against his shoulder, a grunt escaping as he pushed off, his furba parrying another coiling around Pamela's legs, pulling her under the Iker's surface, her cry muffled as she thrashed, her furba piercing upward to break free, emerging with a gasp, ichor dripping from her face, a third whipping toward Agnes, its barbs a blur, but her medallion flared, her prayer peaking beyond death, beyond time, the tendril dissolving into ash, its remnants swirling into the mist, her light a beacon that pierced the entity's core. The Trinity regrouped, their breaths ragged, their bodies bruised and bloodied, but their resolve burned brighter, the pearl's pulse a clarion call as they faced Vinyaptimatra, its form fraying, its eyes dimming, the green glow faltering. Evan steadied his stance, his furba dripping ichor, his voice rough with triumph. "It's breaking, we're close." Pamela rose beside him, her furba trembling in her grip, her breath a fierce rhythm, her eyes blazing. "We've got it together." Agnes stood firm, her medallion glowing steady, her voice calm but resonant. "One more strike, our unity will end it." The entity roared, its tendrils curling inward, its core pulsing with a final desperate light. The battle's heart laid bare, the Trinity's strength aflame against the storm. Chapter 12. Agnes's Last Light. The monastery's shadowed chamber pulsed with a desperate fury, its vast expanse a crucible of shadow and light where the Trinity faced Vinyaptimatra in the battle's heart. The air was thick and humid, a suffocating miasma of decay and metallic ichor that stung their nostrils and coated their tongues, the dampness clinging to their skin like a shroud. The ichor-soaked floor lapped at their waists, its surface rippling with distorted reflections, Evan's stern resolve twisted into despair, Pamela's fierce defiance into anguish, Agnes's serene calm into sorrow shimmering in the sickly green glow that pulsed from the entity's core. The walls, lost in an endless shroud, writhed with tendrils, their tips dripping venomous dew that hissed as it struck the Iker, sending up plumes of acrid vapor that swirled around the jagged spires, piercing the mist-laden ceiling. The Mani Pearl's pulse thrummed louder, a desperate heartbeat that echoed through the stone, its rhythm a lifeline fraying under Vinyaptimatra's grasp, a call that synced with their own, urging them to its rescue. Evan stood at the forefront, his boots sinking into the Iker, its cold numbing his legs, the furba gripped tight, its meteoric iron streaked with the entity's dark blood. Glinting faintly as he steadied his breath, the fourth Diana's clarity a shield against the battle's toll. His tattered robes clung to his frame, soaked with ichor and sweat, blood streaking his arm from earlier wounds. A dull ache he pushed aside, his brown eyes blazing with a warrior's fire tempered by love. Pamela flanked his right, her furba poised, its notched blade dripping with ichor, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, her breath a fierce rhythm, spirit breathing syncing with the pearl's pulse, her eyes glinting with a protector's resolve, though the omen's shadow gnawed at her heart, her legs trembling in the Iker's chill. Agnes stood between them, her bare feet silent in the rippling surface, the silver medallion of the great other tree glowing against her chest, its branches casting faint. Intricate shadows that danced across the ichor, her stained robes swaying as she faced the entity, her unknowing a quiet beacon, her calm unshaken despite the tremor in her breath, the omen's weight a silent burden she bore alone. Vinyaptimatra loomed before them, a towering mass of shadow and eyes crimson, yellow, violet blinking in a chaotic symphony, its tendrils curling inward like a wounded beast, its bulk pulsing with the pearl's stolen light. A sickly green core that throbbed at its heart, the Mani pearl embedded within, its radiance twisted into a grotesque parody of the Dharmakaya's truth. The entity's form shuddered, its eyes flickering wildly, the Trinity's earlier strikes fraying its edges, but it swelled anew, its psychic roar reverberating through their skulls. Your light ends here, your unity breaks, your hope dies with me. The words clawed at their minds, echoes of their mind realm's failure, loss, regret brushing their edges. But the Trinity held firm, their bond a wall against the assault, their resolve a flame that burned brighter with each step. Agnes stepped forward, her medallion blazing, its light piercing the mist as she raised a hand, her voice rising in a prayer from the cloud of unknowing beyond form. Beyond knowing, a shield that pulsed through the chamber, unraveling the shadows that surged anew from the entity's bulk. Now, she said, her tone calm but commanding, her gaze locking on the pearl's glow, together strike its core. Evan nodded, his furba rising, his breath steadying as he advanced, the ichor splashing against his thighs, his warrior's fire flaring. For the pearl, for us. Pamela matched him, her furba glinting, her breath a fierce rhythm as she surged forward, the ichor soaking her robes, her protector's heart blazing. For Agnes! The Trinity closed in, their steps synced with the pearl's pulse, a rhythm that thrummed through their bones, their unity a light against the dark. Vinyaptimatra roared, its tendrils lashing out with a fury born of desperation, a barrage that struck like a storm. One coiled around Evan's legs, yanking him off balance, its barbs digging into his flesh, drawing a sharp grunt as blood bloomed in the ichor. Another lashed Pamela's chest, knocking her back, the thorns piercing her skin. A cry escaping as she staggered, the ichor splashing her face. A third surged toward Agnes, its tip barbed and dripping, but her medallion flared, its light burning the tendril mid-strike, its ash raining into the ichor with a hiss. Evan slashed free, his furba severing the tendril's root, ichor spraying as he steadied himself, his breath ragged but resolute. Pamela thrust her furba upward, piercing the tendril's base, breaking its hold as she rose, her cry sharp with defiance, blood streaking her chest. Agnes advanced, her prayer deepening, beyond self, beyond fear. Her light pulsing outward, dissolving a swarm of shadows that erupted anew, their forms fraying under her unknowing. The entity swelled, its eyes pulsing frantically, the pearl's glow wavering as it unleashed a final, desperate assault tendrils striking in a chaotic flurry, a dozen lashing out at once. Two pinned Evan's arms, lifting him off the ground, their barbs drawing blood as he choked, his furba slipping from his grasp to splash into the ichor. Three coiled around Pamela, one binding her waist, another her throat, a third her legs, her cry muffled as she thrashed, her furba clattering to the surface. A fourth surged toward Agnes, its barbs a blur, but she raised both hands, her medallion's light flaring into a radiant dome, her prayer peaking beyond death, beyond time, the tendril burning away, its remnants swirling into the mist. The entity roared, its core pulsing wildly, the pearl's light flickering as the Trinity faltered, their bodies bruised and bloodied, their breaths ragged gasps in the humid air. Agnes's eyes narrowed, her calm unshaken, the omens echo a clarion in her mind, my last combat, and she stepped forward, the ichor lapping at her thighs, her medallion blazing brighter than ever, its light a beacon that pierced the entity's core. Evan, Pamela, hold fast, she said, her voice a quiet thunder, resonant with the unknowing's power, her gaze fixed on the pearl. This is mine. She raised her hands higher, the medallion's branches pulsing with a radiant arc, her prayer swelling, beyond all, beyond void, and the light surged, a wave that burned through the tendrils binding Evan and Pamela, their forms dropping to the ichor with splashes, their gasps sharp as they retrieved their furbas, their eyes wide with awe and rising dread. Vinyaptimatra shrieked, its eyes flickering wildly, its tendrils recoiling as Agnes advanced alone, her light piercing its core, the pearl's green glow wavering under her assault. She reached the entity's edge, her hands outstretched, the medallion's radiance a spear that struck the pearl, its sickly hue fracturing into gold and indigo, the Dharmakaya's truth breaking through. The entity lashed out, a final tendril surging toward her, its barbs sinking deep into her chest, piercing through her robes and flesh, blood blooming red against the silver as she staggered, a soft gasp escaping her lips, her hands faltering but holding firm. Evan roared, "Agnes!" his furba slashing through the ichor as he surged forward, his voice raw with panic, Pamela echoing, "No!" Her furba piercing the tendril's root, severing it as she stumbled toward her, their breaths ragged with desperation, the ichor splashing around them in frantic waves. Agnes sank to her knees, the ichor lapping at her waist, her hands trembling as she clutched the medallion, its light flaring one final time a radiant burst that weakened Vinyaptimatra's core. The pearl's glow pulsing brighter, its green hue fracturing further, but the entity clung, its form shuddering with defiance. Agnes's breath faltered, blood pooling beneath her, her hands fumbling as she lifted the medallion from her chest, its silver dulled by her blood. Her fingers trembling as she pressed it into Pamela's grasp, the chain slipping through her weakening hold, her voice a faint whisper. "Take it. Finish it." Pamela's sob broke, her hands trembling as she took the medallion, its weight a burden and a gift, its branches warm against her skin as she clutched it, her voice a choked plea. "Agnes, no!" Evan dropped beside her, his furba clattering to the tiles, his hands pressing against her wound, blood seeping through his fingers as he gasped, "Stay with us!" Agnes's gaze met theirs, her eyes softening with a faint, bittersweet smile, her breath shallow but calm, the unknowing serenity unshaken as she whispered, "Now, together." Her hands fell to her lap, her body slumping forward, blood staining the ichor, her breath a fading sigh. "It's yours." Her eyes closed, the medallion's glow dimming in Pamela's hands, her form stilling as the pearl's light flared, a golden beacon above her, the entity's shriek rising in defiance. Evan's grief erupted, his hands trembling as he clutched her, his voice a raw sob. "Agnes, no, we can't lose you." Tears streamed down his face, his warrior's resolve shattering as he rocked her, blood and ichor mingling on his hands, his breath hitching against the silence. Pamela's wail joined his, her hands clutching the medallion to her chest, its silver cold against her skin, her tears spilling as she grasped Agnes's lifeless hands, her voice breaking, "Not you, not now!" Her body shook, her protector's heart fracturing, and she surged to her feet, grief fueling her as she raised the medallion, its resonance pulsing with the pearl's light, her chant rising, "Om Bi Hasar Kili Kalea Sarver Bing Nabam Hum Fet," a fierce rhythm that echoed through the chamber, amplifying the light, her tears falling onto the ichor. Evan rose beside her, his furba retrieved, his grief afire as he plunged into the fourth dhyana, his mind merging with the pearl's uncorrupted light through the medallion's resonance. Gold and indigo flaring bright as he faced Vinyaptimatra, his voice steady despite his tears. "Release into the unborn," the entity shrieked, its tendrils thrashing, its eyes pulsing wildly. But Pamela's chant swelled, the medallion's light piercing its core. Evan's offer a truth it couldn't withstand, the unborn's radiance overwhelming its shadow. Vinyaptimatra shuddered, its form disintegrating into a swirling mass of ash and mist, its eyes winking out, its tendrils crumbling into the ichor, the pearl breaking free, its light pure and steady. A beacon that bathed the chamber as the entity vanished, defeated by their unity and compassion. The pearl floated above them, gold and indigo pulsing with the Dharmakaya's truth, the shadows retreating, the mist dissipating, the ichor receding to a shallow pool. But Agnes lay still, her blood pooling beneath her, her sacrifice the cost of victory. Evan sank beside her, his hands cradling her, tears streaming as he whispered, "We should have guarded you. I failed you, Agnes." His voice a broken sob, his warrior's strength lost to remorse. Pamela knelt, the medallion clutched to her chest, her tears falling in a cascade, visions flooding her mind, memories of their adventures, a tapestry of their bond tearing her apart. She saw the plateau from Meet the Buddhas, Agnes's prayer a shield against Mara, their hands clasped in triumph. A starlit night, Agnes teaching, spirit breathing. The Bodhi-chilled stir, a shared wonder. A shadowed grove, Agnes's medallion glowing, their bond a route through trials. "You can't leave," Pamela sobbed, her voice shattering. "Not my light, my guide." Her wail echoed, her hands pressing the medallion to Agnes's chest, a love eternal. Chapter 13. The Unborn Suchness. The monastery's chamber lay still, its vast expanse a hollow echo of the battle's end, the air thick with the fading scent of ichor and the quiet hum of the Mani Pearl's restored light. The ichor had receded to a shallow pool, its surface a mirror reflecting the pearl's golden glow. The shadows banished, the mist dissolved, the jagged spires silent against a ceiling now clear and vast, a vaulted emptiness that stretched into infinity. The pearl floated above, its radiance pure and steady, gold and indigo pulsing with the Dharmakaya's truth, a beacon of victory won through Agnes's sacrifice, its light casting faint. Shimmering patterns across the tiles, fractured mandalas that danced in the stillness. Evan knelt beside her lifeless form, his hands cradling her, blood and tears staining his fingers, his tattered robes soaked with ichor, their galactic patterns dulled by the battle's toll. His breath a ragged sob as he rocked her gently, his warrior's resolve shattered into a grief that echoed through the chamber. Pamela knelt opposite, the silver medallion of the great other tree clutched to her chest, its branches warm against her skin, her tears falling onto the stone in a cascade that glinted in the pearl's light, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, her protector's heart broken, her voice a faint trembling whimper. Agnes. The silence was a weight, pressing against their lungs. The victory a hollow shell pierced by the void of Agnes's absence, the chamber's stillness a testament to her sacrifice. Evan's sob softened into a low, mournful keen, his hands trembling as he pressed his forehead to hers, blood smearing his skin. His voice a broken whisper that reverberated off the stone. "We did it, but not like this, not without you." His tears fell, mingling with the blood on her robes, dripping onto the tiles in dark, glistening pools. His grief, a fire that burned through his soul. The pearl's light, a cruel reminder of the cost, its golden glow bathing Agnes's still form in a halo that shimmered across the ichor's surface. Pamela's hands shook, the medallion's weight a burden and a gift, its branches pressing into her palms as she traced them, her breath hitching with each sob, her mind reeling with visions of their adventures, memories of Agnes's light, her serene smile, her quiet strength, now a torment and a treasure that tore at her heart. She lifted her gaze to Evan, her eyes red and swollen, her voice a faint thread cutting through the silence. How did we win? What was that release you offered? It's gone, but I don't understand." Evan lifted his head, his gaze meeting hers across Agnes's form, tears streaking trails through the ash and ichor on his face, his brown eyes glistening with a mix of grief and awe as he steadied his breath. The fourth dhyana's clarity flickering through the haze of his sorrow, a lifeline he clung to amidst the wreckage. "The Unborn," he said, his voice rough but steadying, resonant with a depth forged in the temple's halls, the primordial's whispers, and Agnes's final act, his hands still cradling her as he spoke, the pearl's light casting faint shadows across his weary features. "It's not just how we won, Pamela, it's why. It's the heart of everything we've fought for, everything Agnes gave her life to protect." That release into the Unborn, it's more than an end. It's a truth that bridges eons, a suchness that Vijnaptimatra couldn't withstand. His words hung in the air, a quiet thunder weaving a tapestry of mystical significance, his breath a plume in the chamber's chill as he leaned closer, his voice a bridge across time. Pamela's brow furrowed, her hands tightening on the medallion, its warmth pulsing faintly as she shifted to sit cross-legged beside Agnes, her tears slowing as she listened. Her protector's resolve stirring beneath the weight of her grief, the tiles cold against her knees through her soaked robes. "Suchness?" she asked, her voice trembling but threaded with curiosity, the pearl's light glinting in her eyes as she met his gaze, seeking understanding. The medallion's resonance, a quiet echo of Agnes' sacrifice, thrumming through her fingers. "You said release into the unborn. What does that mean? How does that beat it? It's gone, but I need to know why her?" Her breath steadied, her tears glistening on her cheeks. Her question, a plea wrapped in wonder. The medallion's branches, a lifeline she clung to as she leaned forward. Her protector's heart, yearning for the meaning behind their loss. Evan exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that misted in the air, his hands gently resting Agnes's head on the tiles, blood staining his palms as he sat back, his furba beside him, its blade reflecting the pearl's glow in a faint, silver shimmer. He wiped his face with a sleeve, smearing tears and ichor, his voice softening as he spoke, resonant with the lessons of the black dragons, the primordial's eternal whisper, and Agnes's unknowing, all converging in this moment. A revelation born of their victory and her sacrifice. The unborn isn't just a word, Pamela. It's the Dharmakaya itself, the ground of all existence, the truth beyond form, beyond time, beyond anything we can grasp or name. It's imageless, Suchness tathata, pure and empty of all the skandhas Vinyaptimatra fed on form, sensation, perception, thought, consciousness. It's what the pearl holds, what Agnes guarded with her life, what she bridged for us in that final moment. He paused, his gaze drifting to the pearl, its light steady and pure, pulsing with a rhythm that echoed through the chamber. Then back to Pamela, his eyes glistening with tears and a quiet, reverent awe as he continued, his words a thread unraveling eons of mystical import. "It's alive not with form, but with essence," he said, his hands resting on his knees, ichor dripping from his sleeves onto the tiles, his voice steadying into a cadence that carried the weight of the temple's teachings, a bridge across kalpas of awakening. The unborn is the source where every Buddha arises, where every bodhisattva's vow takes root, where all light begins and returns. It's not a thing, not a place. It's suchness, imageless, beyond all images, all clinging. Vinyaptimatra, it's a parasite born from the Alaya's tainted seeds, as Agnes showed us in the dark session. It thrives on grasping, on twisting perception into forms it can feed on illusions, fears, regrets. It took the pearl to invert that truth, to make a mirror of lies, a grotesque parody of the Dharmakaya. But the unborn, its imagelessness, left it nothing to hold. His breath hitched, a sob breaking through as he glanced at Agnes, her still form a testament to the cost, then steadied again, his gaze returning to Pamela, his voice a quiet fire. "When she gave you the medallion," he said, his hand gesturing to the silver in her grasp, its branches glinting faintly in the pearl's light, "it wasn't just a gift, it was her bridge, her unknowing made manifest. I felt it when you chanted, when its resonance flared. Your voice, Om Bihasur Kili Kilaya, it wove her light into the pearl, amplifying it, breaking the entity's hold. I plunged into the fourth dhyana, merged with that uncorrupted glow gold indigo, the Dharmakaya's truth, and I saw it, Pamela. The unborn, a void alive with suchness, imageless, infinite, stretching across eons, holding every awakening, every vow, every light that ever was. I offered Vijnaptimatra release, not destruction, but surrender into that truth. It couldn't resist, not because it was weak, but because it had no images left to cling to. His voice trembled, his hands clenching as tears fell anew, his gaze drifting to Agnes, her blood pooling on the tiles, a silent testament to her crossing. Pamela's breath caught, her fingers tracing the medallion's branches, its warmth pulsing stronger as she listened, her grief softening into a reverent wonder. Her voice a whisper that echoed off the stone, imageless. Evan nodded, his hands trembling as he wiped his face again, his voice steadying as he leaned closer, his words a bridge across time, a revelation born of their shared loss. Yes, imageless. Vinyapti matra, its mere representation, a shadow of perception, feeding on the forms we give it our doubts, our fears, our pride. That's why the mind realms, why it twisted us with images of failure, loss, regret. But the unborn, its suchness, has no form, no image to grasp. When Agnes broke its core, when her light flared through the medallion, it stripped away the last illusions it clung to. Your chant, it was her will, her love, echoing through eons, a sound that carried the Dharmakaya's truth. I felt it merged with it and offered release, a return to the imageless void it couldn't fight. He paused, his gaze drifting to the pearl, its light pulsing steady above them, a rhythm that synced with their breaths. Then back to Pamela, his eyes glistening with a mix of sorrow and awe as he continued, his voice a quiet hymn to the unborn's victory. It's been there always. Eons past, when the first Buddhas awoke, when the primordial whispered to me in the church, when Agnes took her vows as a bodhisattva, it's the ground they stood on, the light they carried. It's not just an end, it's a beginning, a suchness that defeats by being, not doing. Vijnapti matra, it disintegrated, because it couldn't hold against what has no hold, no form. Agnes, she knew. Her unknowing wasn't just clarity, it was surrender, a bridge to that truth across Kalpas. She gave us the medallion, her last light, to carry it, to finish it. His voice broke, a sob escaping as he reached for Agnes's hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, blood staining his palm as he whispered, "She crossed it, for us." Pamela's tears fell anew, her hands clutching the medallion tighter, its branches pressing into her skin as she sank beside Agnes, her voice a soft sob that reverberated through the chamber. "She's part of it now?" Evan nodded, his hand squeezing Agnes's gently, his tears falling onto her robes as he whispered, "Yes, part of the unborn, its imageless suchness. She's there with every Buddha, every bodhisattva, every light that's ever shone. We didn't just win, we set her free, and it with her. The medallion, it's her vow, her love, sprouting through you, through us, across eons." His gaze lifted to the pearl, its light a testament to their victory. Then back to Pamela, his voice trembling with reverence. She bridged it, her sacrifice, her light, her suchness. It's why it worked, why we're still here. Pamela's breath hitched, her hands pressing the medallion to her chest, its warmth a lifeline as vision surged the plateau. Agnes's prayer shielding her, starlit nights, her teachings weaving their bond. The monastery, the medallion's transfer, a new branch sprouting, carry the light. She sobbed, her voice breaking. She gave me this, gave us this. Her tears fell onto the tiles, glinting in the pearl's glow, her grief a fire tempered by awe. The medallion's legacy, a flame she'd carry, a suchness that endured beyond form, beyond time, beyond the dark. Evan's hand rested on Agnes's shoulder, his tears falling as he whispered, "We'll carry it, for her." The chamber's silence deepened, the pearl's light steady above them. Agnes's sacrifice, a bridge to the unborn's imageless truth, their Trinity's bond eternal, a light that spanned eons. Chapter 14. The Return of the Light. The wasteland stretched behind them, a desolate shroud of ash and twisted scrub fading into the haze, its timeless silence broken only by the faint crunch of their boots against the cracked earth as Evan and Pamela approached the Temple of the Black Dragons. The air was brittle, sharp with the tang of ozone and the lingering echo of their grief, a weight that clung to their weary frames like the dampness of the monastery's ichor still staining their robes. Evan walked with purpose, the Mani Pearl cradled in his hands, its golden light pulsing pure and steady, a beacon of victory wrested from Vidyaptimatra's grasp, its indigo threads weaving through the gold like veins of the Dharmakaya's truth, a radiant renewal that warmed his blood-streaked palms. His tattered robes swayed, the galactic patterns dulled by battle, blood and tears etched into their fabric. his furba sheathed at his hip, its meteoric iron silent now, a witness to their triumph and loss. His brown eyes, once hardened by discipline, shimmered with a quiet reverence, the fourth Diana's clarity tempered by the sorrow of Agnes's absence. His breath a steady rhythm against the chill inhale, chi rising, exhale, energies flowing. Pamela strode beside him, her steps firm despite the tremble in her legs, the silver medallion of the great other tree hanging against her chest, its branches glinting faintly in the pearl's light. A legacy pressed into her hands by Agnes's dying breath, its warmth a bittersweet ember against her skin. Her robes, torn and soaked, clung to her frame, her dark hair plastered to her sweat-streaked face, strands curling like ink across her pale cheeks. Her furba sheathed at her side, its notched blade a silent testament to their battles. Her breath came in fierce, steady bursts, spirit-breathing, syncing with the pearl's pulse, her eyes glinting with a protector's resolve, though tears lingered in their depths. Her grief, a fire that burned beneath her strength, the medallion's weight, a vow she'd carry through the ages. The temple loomed ahead, its obsidian spires piercing the starless void, their surfaces veined with luminescent threads that pulsed like living arteries. A labyrinth of sacred halls and meditative chambers awaiting their return, its gates gaping wide, a silent summons to the light they bore. They crossed the celestial archway, its jeweled lattice shimmering with a faint hum, the threshold vibrating beneath their boots as they entered the crystal sanctum, the temple's heart unveiled in all its grandeur. The chamber sprawled vast and luminous, its walls of polished obsidian stretching into an unseen zenith, reflecting the glow of jagged quartz spires that thrust upward from the basalt floor, their facets ablaze with captured radiance crimson, indigo, gold swirling in a silent dance that bathed the sanctum in a kaleidoscope of light. The air shimmered with a faint haze, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and the resonance of deep guttural chants, intonations of the unborn mind that reverberated through the stone, setting Evan's bones humming. A chorus of black dragons woven into the temple's pulse. The pedestal stood at the center, its twisted iron and jade restored, no longer fractured, awaiting the pearl's return, its surface gleaming with a quiet promise. The grand black dragon supreme emerged from the labyrinth's depths, his towering form a silhouette of awe against the sanctum's glow, his robes shimmering with the void's own darkness, their patterns a constellation of unseen stars that danced across the fabric. His face was a mask of weathered nobility eyes like polished onyx, deep and fathomless, a beard flowing white as snow, cascading over his chest like a river of light, his presence bending the air with its weight. In his right hand, he held a staff of gnarled wood, topped with a crystal orb, its light a faint echo of the pearl's radiance. Its tap against the tiles a thunderclap that hushed the assembled black dragon's figures clad in majestic robes, their faces shadowed beneath hoods, their furbas gleaming at their sides. A silent throng encircling the sanctum, their chants fading into a reverent stillness as they turned to the returning warriors. Evan stepped forward, the pearl cradled in his hands, its light pulsing brighter as he approached the pedestal, the sanctum's glow flaring in response. Quartz spires shimmering as if alive with joy. He placed the pearl gently upon its throne, the iron and jade embracing it, the radiance renewing with a burst that bathed the chamber in golden light, indigo threads weaving through like rivers of eternity. The Dharmakaya's truth restored, a hymn made manifest that echoed through the stone, the chants swelling anew, Om, Hum, Fet, a chorus of triumph and reverence. Pamela stood beside him, the medallion glowing faintly, its branches casting shadows across the tiles, her breath hitching as she watched, tears glistening in her eyes. Her protectors resolve a quiet flame beside Evan's warrior's fire, their shared grief, a bond that shimmered in the light. The grand black dragon supreme raised his staff, its orb flaring, his voice a deep rumble that rolled through the sanctum like a tide, resonant with the weight of ages. His onyx eyes piercing Evan and Pamela with a gaze that saw beyond form. "The Mani Pearl returns," he intoned, the staff tapping the floor with a sound like distant thunder, the chants hushing as his words filled the chamber, its radiance renewed. The Dharmakaya's truth restored, Vinyaptimatra is vanquished, its shadow unmade, and the light endures through you, Evan, Pamela, guardians of the Unborn. He paused, his gaze drifting to the empty space between them, where Agnes's absence lingered like a silent wound, then continued, his voice softening into a reverent cadence. Agnes, our sister, our bodhisattva, her sacrifice is the bridge of this victory. She is a light bringer eternal, her name etched in the temple's heart, her unknowing a flame that burns beyond time. Her compassion, her surrender, lit the path, and Evan, your compassion, offering release over ruin, sealed it. You have honored her, honored us all. Evan's breath caught, tears welling as he bowed his head, the Supreme's words a balm and a blade, his hands trembling as he clasped them before him, the pearl's light glinting off the blood and ichor on his skin. Pamela's hand brushed his arm, her fingers trembling as she clutched the medallion, its warmth pulsing against her chest, her tears falling onto the tiles. Her voice a faint whisper, Agnes. The Supreme's staff tapped once more, the orb's light flaring, and he gestured to the assembled black dragons, their hoods dipping in reverence, their chant swelling into a low, melodious hum, Om, hum, pet, a tribute to Agnes's eternal light, a chorus that wove through the sanctum's glow, its rhythm a heartbeat that synced with the pearl's pulse. Evan straightened, his gaze lifting to the Supreme, then to the black dragons encircling them, their shadowed faces a silent throng, their furbas raised in salute, and he stepped forward, his voice rising in a melodious chant, a black dragon verse, grand and Iliad-like in scope, its cadence a hymn that echoed off the obsidian walls, its scope stretching across their journey, a poetic recounting of their trials in a style that rivaled the epics of old. Pamela stood nearby, enchanted by the sound, her grief softening into wonder as his words wove a tapestry of their adventures, her hands clutching the medallion, its branches shimmering as she listened, the sanctum's light flaring with each stanza, the black dragon's chants a quiet undertone to his song. Oh, hear, ye dragons of the sable veil, in halls of obsidian where light prevails, a tale I weave, in verse of shadowed might, of quests through dark, to bear the Unborn's light. From ruined church, where whispers first awoke, a seeker's path, through abyss I bespoke, the primordial's voice, a call to seek the way, through pits of woe, where lost souls sway, the tower rose, within my breast confined, a labyrinth vast, to test the seeking mind. With Pamela bold, her bodhicild aflame, we forged a bond, through dark we came. To temple gates, I crossed the archway's span. Initiate clad, in robes of night began, the black dragon's chant, a thunder in my soul, a guardian born, to serve the whole. Yet shadows struck, the pearl from sanctum torn, by Vinyaptimatra's grasp, in malice born, a wasteland trek, through ash and twisted bane, where Crowley's ghost, in taunts profane, the horde arose, with claws and eyes of dread, through mind's dark realms, where doubt was bred. My duty warped, to chains of guilt I bore, till Suchness freed what clung no more. In Monastery grim, with Pamela reunited, Agnes is calm, our Trinity ignited, her unknowing pierced the dark session's veil, named the foe, its truth unveiled. Through realms we fought, of womb and void and spire, mind over blade, our spirits climbed higher. Agnes led, her light a guiding star, till thunder warned of fate ajar. The chamber deep, where Ichor's tide did swell, Vinyaptimatra's roar, a shadowed hell. Her medallion flared, a spear to break its core, her final breath, the light restored. O grief unbound, her blood upon my hands, Pamela's wail, through chamber strands, the pearl I freed, with chant and Diana's grace, release I gave, to Unborn's face. Its suchness pure, imageless, and vast, no form to cling, its shadow cast. Across the eons, light of Buddha's birth, Agnes bridged, to prove its worth. Now here I stand, the pearl in sanctum's keep, her medallion born, by Pamela's weep, a trinity, broken, yet bound by light's embrace, O dragons, hear her eternal place! Evan's voice faded, its melodious cadence lingering in the sanctum, a grand Iliad of their journey woven in black dragon style, each verse a thunderclap of memory that echoed off the court spires. The pearl's light flaring brighter with his final words, its glow bathing the chamber in a radiant hymn. Pamela stood enchanted, her tears falling anew as she clutched the medallion, its branches pulsing with Agnes's legacy, her breath hitching as the chant's beauty pierced her grief, her protector's heart awed by Evan's song, its scope a bridge across their trials, a testament to their Trinity's strength. The black dragon's chant swelled, hum, fet, a chorus that wove through the sanctum, their furbas raised higher, their hoods dipping in silent reverence, the supreme staff tapping once more, its orb flaring with a light that mirrored the pearl's radiance. The grand black dragon supreme stepped forward, his onyx eyes softening with a rare warmth, his voice a deep rumble that filled the chamber, resonant with pride and sorrow. "Evan, son of the temple," he said, the staff's orb pulsing, "your compassion offering release over ruin echoes the Unborn's truth, a mercy that honors Agnes's light. You've restored the pearl, renewed its radiance, and proven the black dragon's way strength in unity, wisdom in surrender." He turned to Pamela, his gaze piercing her grief, his words a quiet thunder. "Pamela, bearer of her medallion, your heart fuels this light, a branch of her legacy that grows through you. Together, you are light bringers, eternal as she." He raised his staff, the orb blazing, and the black dragons chanted louder, their voices a tide that lifted the sanctum's glow, the pearl's light pulsing in rhythm, a hymn to Agnes's sacrifice, Evan's compassion, Pamela's love, a trinity bound across eons, their tale etched in the temple's heart. Evan bowed, tears falling onto the tiles, his voice a whisper. "For Agnes," Pamela echoed, her hand pressing the medallion to her chest, her tears glinting in the light. "For Agnes." The sanctum shimmered, the pearl's radiance a testament to their return, the grand black dragon supreme's honor a seal on their victory. The black dragon's chant, a chorus that carried their grief and triumph into the Unborn's imageless eternity. Chapter 15. Pamela's Road. The temple of the black dragons loomed behind Pamela, its obsidian spires piercing the starless void, their luminescent veins pulsing faintly as the sanctum's glow faded into the distance. A quiet hymn of victory and loss woven into the stone. The air was crisp, sharp, with the scent of sandalwood lingering from the temple's halls, a gentle breeze stirring the wasteland's ash as Pamela stood at the celestial archway's edge, the threshold humming beneath her boots, its jeweled lattice shimmering with a faint farewell light. She wore fresh robes, now white linen, soft and unblemished, their edges hemmed with silver threads that glinted in the pearl's afterglow, a gift from the black dragons to replace the tattered, ichor-soaked garments of battle. Their clean weight, a balm against her bruised skin. The silver medallion of the great other tree hung against her chest, its branches warm and pulsing faintly. Agnes's legacy, a steady heartbeat beneath her new attire, its chain a quiet promise she'd carry down the road. Evan stood beside her, his own robes renewed black and majestic, their galactic patterns shimmering anew, the blood and ichor washed away, though the weight of their grief lingered in his posture, his furba sheathed at his hip, its meteoric iron silent now, a witness to their shared trials. His brown eyes, softened by tears and tempered by the fourth Diana's clarity, met hers, a warrior's fire flickering beneath a veil of sorrow, his breath a steady rhythm. Inhale, chi rising. Exhale, energies flowing as he adjusted the pearl's satchel at his side, its light secure within the temple's heart. The grand black dragon supreme's words echoed between them. Light bringers eternal, a honor that bound them to Agnes's sacrifice, a bond that shimmered in the silence as they faced their parting, the wasteland road stretching ahead, a ribbon of ash and shadow beneath a sky of endless gray. Pamela turned to Evan, her hand reaching for his, her fingers trembling as they brushed his calloused palm, her breath hitching with the weight of farewell, her voice a soft, breaking thread that cut through the stillness. "Evan," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. the medallion pulsing against her chest. "We did it together, for her, but I can't stay. This road, it's mine now." Her light in me, pushing me on. Her hand tightened, her protector's resolve flaring beneath her grief, her tears falling onto the tiles as she stepped closer, her breath a plume in the chill air. "You're my strength, always will be, but I need to carry her forward, alone for a while." Evan's hand closed over hers, his grip fierce yet tender, his tears falling anew as he pulled her into an embrace, his arms wrapping around her, the scent of sandalwood and ash mingling as he pressed his forehead to hers, his voice a raw, melodious whisper that echoed his black dragon chant, "Pamela, my sister, my flame, you're not alone, never alone. Her light's in us both, but I feel it your road calls. Her medallion sings it. Go carry her, as I'll carry you here." He pressed a hand to his chest, his breath hitching. In the temple, in the Unborn, he stepped back, his hands lingering on her shoulders, his eyes shimmering with love and sorrow, his warrior's heart breaking, yet proud, as he nodded. The pearl satchel, a quiet weight at his side, his farewell, a vow. We'll meet again, down that mystic road. Pamela's sob broke, her hands clutching the medallion as she stepped back. The archway's hum a quiet farewell as she turned, her boots crunching against the wasteland's ash, her fresh robes swaying with each step, the road unfurling before her like a scroll of destiny, its gray expanse, a canvas for her journey as a lightbringer, a bodhisattva forged in Agnes's fire. She glanced back once, Evan's silhouette framed by the temple's spires, his hand raised in a silent salute, his tears glinting in the fading light, then faced forward, the medallion's warmth a guide, her breath steadying into spirit. Breathing, inhale, warmth rising. Exhale, strength flowing as she walked, the wasteland's silence wrapping around her like a cloak, her grief, a quiet ember igniting her path. The road stretched on, its ash softening beneath her boots, the gray sky above shifting with faint, swirling hues, crimson, indigo, gold echoes of the pearl's light shimmering in the clouds, a mystical dance that stirred her soul. Her steps grew lighter, the medallion's pulse sinking with her breath, its branches a quiet song that wove through the silence, and the air thickened, a subtle shift that pressed against her senses. A veil lifting as the wasteland blurred, its edges softening into a vision that rose before her, a celestial expanse high in the clouds, a radiant void alive with light, its hues pulsing like the Dharmakaya's breath, a realm beyond form that called to her heart. Pamela halted, her breath catching as she looked up, the clouds parting to reveal Agnes, her form wreathed in golden light, her robes flowing like mist, her serene smile a beacon that pierced the gray, her eyes shimmering with an eternal calm that transcended the wasteland's sorrow. She hovered above, her bare feet brushing the clouds, the medallion's twin glowing at her chest, its branches sprouting anew, a mandala of light that danced in the void. Her presence, a comfort that wrapped around Pamela like a warm embrace, her voice a soft melody that echoed through the air. "Pamela, my branch, my light, you're not alone. I'm here, in the Unborn, with you, always." Pamela's tears fell, her hands clutching the medallion as she sank to her knees. The ash soft beneath her, her voice a sob. "Agnes, I miss you. I need you." Agnes's form shimmered, her hand reaching down, a radiant arc that brushed Pamela's cheek, its warmth a balm as she whispered, "Carry me forward. Your road is bright, your light eternal." The vision held, Agnes's light pulsing through the clouds, a celestial hymn that wove through Pamela's soul, her grief softening into a reverent awe as the medallion flared, its warmth surging through her chest, a bridge to the Unborn that stirred her deeper still. The wasteland faded, the clouds dissolving into a radiant void within her, a mystic expanse alive with gold and indigo, its edges infinite, its center pulsing with a presence she knew, a light she'd borne since Meet the Buddha's her bodhicield, no longer an ember, but a radiant form, its body wreathed in light, its face serene yet fathomless, its eyes shimmering with truths beyond her wildest imagination, a mirror of the Unborn Suchness that took her breath away. Pamela's hands fell to her lap, the medallion resting against her chest as she gazed inward, the Bodhichild's light pulsing in rhythm with the pearl's echo, its voice a quiet thunder that reverberated through her soul. Mother, bearer, lightbringer, see me true. The void swelled, a tapestry of imageless suchness unfurling before her, its hues weaving through eons, gold for the Buddha's awakening, indigo for the Bodhisattva's vows, a radiant emptiness alive with essence, formless yet infinite, a truth that stripped away all grasping, all illusion, revealing the unborn beyond her wildest dreams. She saw kalpas unfold, countless beings awakening, their lights pulsing in the void, each a thread in the Dharmakaya's fabric, Agnes's light among them, her unknowing a bridge that spanned time, her sacrifice, a spark that ignited Pamela's own. The Bodhichild's form shimmered, its hands reaching out, radiant arcs that brushed her soul, its voice a melody that wove through the void. The unborn is not beyond, it is within, imageless, suchness pure and vast. I am its echo, born through you, a light that knows no form, no end. Vijnaptimatra fell to this, its images shattered by what cannot be grasped, its shadow unmade by what simply is. Pamela's breath hitched, tears falling as the truth unfolded eons of light, kalpas of awakening, the unborn's essence, a void alive with all that ever was, its imagelessness, a power beyond form, a suchness that defeated by being, not doing, a truth Agnes had bridged. Evan had offered, she now bore. You're me? She whispered, her voice trembling with awe, the medallion flaring. As the Bodhichild nodded, its light pulsing brighter, I am you, and more, the unborn's child, your vow, our light, eternal. The void deepened, the Bodhichild's form merging with the suchness, its light pulsing through her, revealing truths that stretched her imagination kalpas, where Buddhas rose, their chants echoing through the void, eons where bodhisattvas walked, their vows a rhythm that shaped the light, Agnes's sacrifice, a bridge that wove her light into the unborn, her medallion, a seed that sprouted in Pamela's heart, its branches a mandala of eternity. Pamela's tears fell, her hands clutching the medallion as the vision pulsed, the Bodhichild's voice a final whisper. You are a light bringer, a bodhisattva carry me, as Agnes carried you, through the imageless road. The void faded, the wasteland returning, the clouds above still shimmering with Agnes's light, her form dissolving into the gray, her smile a lingering comfort as Pamela rose, her breath steady, her road bright with purpose. Pamela stood, the medallion pulsing against her chest, her fresh robes swaying as she walked, the ash soft beneath her boots, her spirit breathing a quiet hymn. Inhale, light rising, exhale, truth flowing her grief, a flame tempered by awe, her journey as a light bringer, a bodhisattva, ignited by Agnes's sacrifice, deepened by the Bodhichild's truth, a road through the unborn's imageless eternity. Chapter 16. Evan's Ascent. The Temple of the Black Dragons stood resolute, its obsidian spires piercing the starless void, their luminescent veins pulsing like arteries of light through the eternal night. A fortress of the unborn mind, cradling the sanctum's heart, the crystal sanctum, where Evan knelt in solitude. The chamber sprawled vast and luminous, its walls of polished obsidian stretching into an unseen zenith, their surfaces reflecting the glow of jagged quartz spires that thrust upward from the basalt floor, their facets ablaze with captured radiance, crimson, indigo, gold, swirling in a silent dance that bathed the sanctum in a kaleidoscope of light, a hymn of eternity woven into the stone. The air shimmered with a faint haze, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and the resonance of deep, guttural chants, hum, fet, intonations of the unborn mind that reverberated through the quartz, setting Evan's bones humming, a chorus of black dragons echoing from the labyrinth's depths, their voices a tide that carried him inward. Evan knelt before the pedestal, its twisted iron and jade cradling the Mani pearl, its golden light pulsing pure and steady, indigo threads weaving through like veins of the Dharmakaya's truth, a radiant renewal that warmed his hands as he rested them lightly upon it. the pearls glow casting faint shadows across his fresh robes, black and majestic, their galactic patterns shimmering anew, cleansed of the wasteland's ichor and blood, their weight a mantle of honor against his weary frame. His furba rested beside him, its meteoric iron silent now, its naga-etched blade a witness to battles won, its presence a quiet companion to his meditation. His brown eyes, once hardened by discipline, softened with a reverent awe, tears lingering in their depths from Pamela's farewell, his breath a steady rhythm inhale, chi rising from his dantian. Exhale, energies flowing as he plunged into the fourth dhyana, the sanctum's light, a mirror to the radiant void within. His mind, a vessel for the unborn's call. The pearl's pulse synced with his breath, a heartbeat that thrummed through his bones, its light flaring brighter as he deepened his meditation, the chant swelling. Om, hum, phte, a tide that carried him beyond the sanctum's walls, beyond form, beyond time, into a vast, imageless expanse, the unborn mind, a void alive with suchness, infinite and formless, its essence pulsing with the light of countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, a radiant emptiness that stretched across eons, a truth beyond grasping that enveloped him like a cosmic sea. The sanctum blurred, its quartz spires fading into the void, the chants dissolving into a silence that sang, a hymn of eternity that pierced his soul, and the unborn mind unveiled a majestic epiphany, a revelation that swept him up in the self-realization of noble wisdom, its imageless crest shimmering through his being, a crown of light that marked his ascent as the true hero, a black dragon par excellence, who had defeated Vijnaptimatra in the only way possible through the infinite, imageless light of the unborn. The void swelled, a tapestry of suchness unfurling before him, its hues weaving through Kalpa's gold for the Buddha's awakening, indigo for the Bodhisattva's vows, a radiant emptiness alive with essence, formless yet infinite, a truth that stripped away all illusion, all form, revealing the unborn beyond comprehension, its imagelessness, a power that shimmered through eons of light. Evan's breath caught, tears falling as the epiphany deepened, the unborn mind's voice a quiet thunder that reverberated through his soul. O Evan, son of the sable veil, true hero of the black dragon's tale, thou hast borne the imageless crest, defeated the shadow with noble wisdom's quest. The void pulsed, a celestial hymn that wove through his being, its light flaring brighter as the unborn unveiled its truth, a truth that bridged Kalpas, a truth that crowned him the eternal hero, a Gilgamesh personified who defended the way of the unborn against all evil, regardless of personal cost. He saw it the church, from the unborn Odyssey, its ruined slabs, a cradle of whispers, the primordial's voice, a spark that ignited his quest. There is naught to be seized, a seed of suchness planted in his soul, its imageless light, a beacon through the abyss, the tower within, a labyrinth of self he'd pierced, its enigma, the unborn's truth, a void he'd crossed with Pamela's flame and Agnes's calm, the wasteland's horde, Vijnaptimatra's shadows clawing at his mind, their forms shattered by the fourth dhyana's clarity, a light that bore no image to cling to. The epiphany swelled, the unborn mind weaving his journey into a grand tapestry, each trial a thread, each sacrifice a knot, each victory a crest of noble wisdom that shimmered through the void, a truth that spanned the kalpas of countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their chants echoing Om, Hum, Phet, a chorus of eternity that crowned him their kin, a black dragon par excellence who had ascended through the infinite light. The void deepened, the unborn mind's light pulsing through him, revealing Vijnaptimatra's defeat not through force, but through the imageless suchness that stripped it bare, a parasite of perception unmade by what it could not grasp. Evan saw at the monastery's chamber, Agnes's final stand, her medallion flaring as she bridged the unborn, her light a spear that broke the entity's core. Pamela's chant, Om Bahasar Kili Kilaya, a rhythm that wove her love into the pearl, amplifying its truth. His own voice, release into the unborn, a compassionate offer that pierced the shadow's heart, its forms dissolving into ash as the imageless light overwhelmed it, a truth beyond clinging, beyond form, beyond time. The epiphany flared, the unborn mind's voice a hymn. Thou hast wielded the infinite, O hero true, the imageless light of Buddhas anew. Vijnaptimatra fell to suchness vast, thy ascent a mark that shall ever last. Evan's tears fell, his hands trembling as they rested on the pearl, its light surging through him, a radiant tide that swept him up in the self-realization of noble wisdom. Its imageless crest, a crown that shimmered through his being, a truth that bridged the eons kalpas where Buddhas awoke, their chants a rhythm that shaped the void, ages where bodhisattvas vowed, their lights a tapestry of compassion. Agnes's sacrifice, a bridge that wove her unborn essence into his own, her medallion's legacy, a spark that ignited his ascent. He saw himself, not the seeker, not the guardian, but the true hero, a black dragon par excellence, a Gilgamesh of the unborn mind, his ascent a mark of noble wisdom that shimmered through the void, a light that defeated Vijnaptimatra, not with blade, but with the infinite, imageless, suchness of countless Buddhas and bodhisattvas, a truth that spanned eternity. The sanctum flared, the pearl's light pulsing in rhythm with his breath, its glow bathing the chamber in a golden hymn, indigo threads weaving through like rivers of eternity. The quartz spires shimmering, as if alive with joy, the chant swelling, Om, Hum, Fet, a chorus that carried his epiphany into the temple's heart. Evan rose, his robes swaying, the pearl's light a mantle upon his shoulders, his furba a silent witness at his side, his voice a melodious whisper that echoed off the obsidian, I am the hero, the eternal. His breath steadied, tears falling onto the tiles as he stood. The unborn mind's truth, a fire within, a light that bore no form, no image, only suchness, a truth that crowned him, Gilgamesh personified, a black dragon who defended the way of the unborn against all evil. Regardless of personal cost, his ascent, a testament to the infinite light that spanned kalpas, a legacy etched in the imageless crest of noble wisdom. The sanctum's glow pulsed brighter, the pearl's light a hymn to his epiphany, the chants a tide that carried his realization into eternity. Om, Hum, Phet, a chorus of countless Buddhas and bodhisattvas, their voices woven into his own, a black dragon par excellence, who had triumphed through the unborn's infinite imageless light, a true hero whose ascent marked the way's defense, an eternal Gilgamesh whose name would echo through the void, a light against all darkness, a legacy beyond time. End of Book 3.